Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 The Prophet. Darkness awakens the spirit, time is disordered, the person who has been deprived of memory has glimpsed the truth in the fog, pierced the disguise of the god of death, and the dead are on their way. This sentence still bothers Maureen. To Maureen, he is more like a bystander than a participant. But when you go back to the past, in a way, it is equivalent to seeing the future, right? Remember my 3 silver sickles yesterday? This is what you won with your powerful prophecy. Tell me, what will happen next? Will a giant monster break into the hollow or something? I have to place a bet quickly. I can make a fortune this time. Hugo shook his pocket and said with a smile. Maureen laughed. Don't be silly, I'm not a prophet. That's not necessarily true. Hugo took a bite of grilled cheese and bacon, which not only reminded Maureen of the childish old wizard he met just now, but also deliberately misheard Sir Cadogan as grilled bacon and cheese. Maybe one of your ancestors is a natural prophet. You just don't know it. Go back and check the family tree. It's best to check all the distant relatives for 18 generations. Maybe you are the 5th great-great-grandson of the 2nd uncle of the eldest cousin of Cassandra's youngest son, the 3rd brother-in-law of the 4th aunt. Hugo said casually. Who is Cassandra? Maureen asked. Cassandra Trelawney. She is a real prophet. My father said that Professor Sybil Trelawney of our school is Cassandra's great-great-grandson for many generations, but she only inherited part of her ancestors' prophetic talent. The predictions she makes are usually unreliable. Only in a certain state can she make real predictions. The predictions of Voldemort and Harry Potter were made by her. Hugo explained. I don't know Cassandra, and I haven't heard from my grandfather that there are any prophets in my ancestors. Maureen said affirmatively. Go back and ask your grandfather. Maybe your prophecy is better than Professor Trelawney's. I just don't know how to control it. Maybe you need to recite some spells, and then take a shower with unicorn urine on a full moon night to open your mind. Hugo stretched out his hand and circled Maureen's head, and said with a face full of longing, if you master the prophecy, I will be rich. Maureen laughed. Forget it, your so-called enlightenment sounds disgusting. Maureen didn't think he was a prophet, because every time he went back to the past, it was a real scene. Although he didn't know much about prophecy, he came from a wizard family and at least had a general impression of prophecy. It was nothing more than tea leaves, crystal balls, palm reading, and looking at the stars to infer good and bad luck. There was no prophecy that really went through certain things and then went back to the past. Besides, this is not prophecy. In addition to knowing some things that happened around him, he didn't know anything about other people. But Maureen suddenly frowned. Did he really know nothing about what others did? If he really had a way to predict the past as Hugo said, he could go anywhere, see what he wanted to see, and then go back. From a certain perspective, it seemed to be a prophecy. But is it possible? Can a person go back to the past at will? Maureen thought the idea was a bit unbelievable. I have to look into this matter. I'll ask about the missing people this afternoon. I'll compare their heights, weights, hobbies, and dislikes. Maybe we can find something in common. Hugo turned around, picked up a fork and forked a piece of bacon, then suddenly exclaimed, oh, I forgot something. What is it? Maureen also sat down, and he jumped from his shoulder to the dining table and started eating. Hugo grinned and said, Lily has also lost her memory, right? So there should be a mark on her back. Then shouldn't you go and take a look at her back? Maybe Lily will find that she has the mark of a Death Eater. That would be fun. Maureen was stunned for a moment, thinking that Lily was a girl. It seemed not a good idea to do so. He shrugged his shoulders. Don't be silly, she won't agree. After dinner, he returned to the Gryffindor common room, but Lily was not there. She must have gone to sleep as soon as she came back, just like Hugo did last time. Hugo ran to investigate the information of those people with great interest. When Maureen was thinking about whether to go to the library, an owl flew in from the window. He recognized it as Beretta, the bird he kept at home, and there was a small package hanging under Beretta's feet. Thank you for your hard work, Beretta. Maureen rubbed Beretta's head and took a letter from the package. It was written by Grandpa Alton. Dear Maureen, how is your study in school? I haven't heard from you for a month since you told me you were sorted into Gryffindor. I hope everything is going well. This is an apricot roll pie, sent by your Aunt Maggie. You can have a try. You should be able to control magic well by now. Don't roll your classmate's eyes or blow up the bed in the dormitory in anger. I know you are restless. Try to avoid trouble. Yesterday was very bad. When I was helping the ministry to break a Muggle soda bottle that was cursed, the bottle accidentally lost control and the house was flooded by the water in the Muggle soda bottle. All the books and toys in your bedroom were soaked. The damn water can't be dried by magic, so it can only be swept away. It's really annoying. How are you doing with the Muggle Studies course that has been open this year? If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. After all, I am a senior retired official of the Ministry of Magic's Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Department. Write to me and tell me how your studies are going recently. Love you, Grandpa. Who was soaked by water. The house was flooded by water from a Muggle soda bottle. Maureen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Grandpa often helped the Ministry of Magic to break the Muggle items that were cursed, but sometimes some spells made people helpless. Sometimes you really can't underestimate those inconspicuous things that were cast with magic. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. He opened the package, took out the pie and took a bite, and crushed some for Beretta to eat. Then he remembered Hugo's words and felt that he should really ask Grandpa about things like prophecy. Maureen took out a pen from his school bag, found a piece of parchment, and wrote, "Dear Grandpa, I'm sorry that the house was flooded by water from a soda bottle. I hope that the family album is fine. I like the taste of the pie. Thank Aunt Maggie for me. I follow the rules and laws in school." Mullen blushed slightly when he wrote this. "I have never blown up the bed in the dormitory. The bed at home collapsed by itself last time. It had nothing to do with me. I get along well with my classmates, but there is a roommate in the dormitory who rarely talks and looks weird. By the way, Grandpa, are there any relatives in our family who are good at divination magic? Or is there anyone who is a prophecy wizard? My astronomy is a mess. I don't know why, but the star charts I see are always different from others. Do you know this? I may fail my astronomy and divination. I hope someone can guide me. As for Muggle studies, I am doing okay." Maureen decided not to tell his grandfather how bad his Muggle studies class was, because he just realized that 80% of the Muggle studies knowledge he learned from his grandfather was wrong. Looking at Doy, who was eating pie, Maureen continued to write, "By the way, have you heard of animals that can remain invisible? Also, the Sorting Hat told me last time that there is a magic hidden in heterochromatic eyes. Do you know about this? Cryfinder's Quidditch team is recruiting substitutes, and I was selected. In the first game yesterday, I had the opportunity to play and caught a golden snitch. I played as a substitute chaser at that time. I was very lucky. Now I have become a celebrity in the school. Love you, your law-abiding grandson who does not violate school rules, Maureen." Maureen was very satisfied with the last sentence. He rolled up the letter and stuffed it into the small leather bag on Beretta's feet. He also fed Beretta some water before letting it set off. Chapter 77 Music and Art. Maureen is now the most promising Quidditch star in the school. Wherever he goes, people will look at him. He was a little uncomfortable at first, but soon he got used to it. Except for being stopped by Madonna from the Magic Sound Club again when get out of class was over, nothing unusual happened. Are you really not considering joining our club? Don't you think it is a very wonderful experience to create music with magic? For us wizards, music is not only limited to singing, but also displayed in various flowers, trees, birds and animals. Think about it. It is a magical thing to amplify the sound of mosquitoes sucking blood into a mixed sound of accompaniment. Madonna refused to give up Maureen and repeatedly tried to keep him. Do mosquitoes also make sounds when they suck blood? Maureen asked in surprise. Yes, I'll show you. Madonna took out a transparent bottle of candy from her school bag, but it was not candy, but dozens of densely packed mosquitoes. Hugo frowned in disgust. No one likes mosquitoes. But Madonna had already bravely put her hand into the bottle, and the mosquitoes immediately stuck to her skin. Maureen and Hugo both got goosebumps all over their bodies. Madonna took out her magic wand and tapped the glass bottle, and then a very strange gurgling sound suddenly came out of the bottle, as if someone was drinking water. The accompaniment of mosquitoes sucking blood. I'll sing a song for you, and you'll understand. Madonna cleared her throat and sang the famous song Funeral of the Dark Lord by the popular singer Magic Wizard. The lyrics are roughly as follows. In the dark days, there is a demon king whose name cannot even be mentioned. He brought violent storms and rainstorms, making it impossible for people to see the dawn. The child who survived a catastrophe rose from the dark night and played the music of counterattack. Love and courage under oppression are never absent. The Dark Lord disdained these principles and was caught off guard. He arranged his own funeral with his own hands. Every time Madonna sang a sentence, she would knock on the bottle in her hand, and then the gurgling sound in the bottle would be regularly amplified and reduced to accompany different tones. But for some reason, Maureen always felt distressed for her, because this was equivalent to singing with her own blood, which was a serious act of self-mutilation. Madonna, you sing very well, but I'm really not interested in music. I'm very sorry. Maureen saw that Madonna's arms had been bitten red by mosquitoes, and he felt a little bit sorry. He thought that artists in the wizarding world were really bold. They couldn't make music without the spirit of self-sacrifice. Boring. Sweet suddenly looked at Madonna coldly from behind, looked a little annoyed and said, then turned around and left. Huh? Maureen looked at Sweet in surprise. Sweet usually never took the initiative to comment on other people's behavior, and was too lazy to even say anything. She didn't understand why he suddenly said that today. This is not boring, this is art. Art is above everything. Madonna shouted angrily at Sweet's back. Let's go quickly. If you join this magic sound club, you will be sucked dry one day. Hugo urged in a low voice. Maureen and Hugo quickly quickened their pace, left Madonna, and followed Sweet to the Muggle Studies classroom. But on the way, Hugo suddenly said, why do you think Sweet would say such things to Madonna? Doesn't he like this song? This song is a curse on Voldemort, could it be? Hugo opened his eyes wide and continued, he supports Voldemort? That makes sense. You yourself said that you have seen him in the corridor on the 7th floor many times, right? And there are dark wizard marks on the backs of our missing people, so this must be the case. Just one song can't explain anything. Maureen looked at Sweet's back from a distance. Sweet also disappeared with Lily last time, but he came back before Lily, and seemed to have forgotten what he was going to say to Maureen. I think Sweet is the most suspicious of so many missing and amnesia cases in the school. Hugo insisted on his point of view. They walked into the Muggle Studies class together and found a seat to sit down. Sweet was still sitting in the inconspicuous corner at the back. Professor Charles was already in the classroom, standing on the podium and looking at everyone in a gentle manner. After everyone was present, he spoke. In this class, we will learn the difference between Muggle paintings and wizard paintings. I think many people are already accustomed to the characters in the paintings walking around in the school castle, but Muggle paintings do not move. I brought a Muggle portrait for this class, and you can refer to it. Professor Charles waved his wand gently, and a photo frame on the podium floated up and stood in the air. The portrait showed a blonde woman, smiling at everyone, with a motionless expression on her face. Behind her was a tree, and the sparrows on the tree were also still. There were also some people on the street, all keeping the same posture. The people in the Muggle paintings look really stupid, don't they? Hugo looked at the motionless painting with interest. The class was full of Muggle blind students who failed the first test. When they saw the motionless painting, everyone felt it was amazing. Professor, why don't Muggle paintings move? They always keep the same posture. Aren't they tired? A girl raised her hand and asked in confusion. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. That's right. Even if I have to stretch or yawn, I can't stand it if I have to keep the same posture forever. Many students also whispered to each other, pointing at the still painting brought by Professor Charles. A boy sitting in the front row even wanted to reach out and poke the woman in the painting to see if he could make her move. Professor Charles smiled and said, the Muggle world is different from ours. Their paintings focus on lines, color matching, the use of 3 primary colors and other complex principles. Many of their painting techniques rely on the difference in colors to create a sense of layering. Sometimes they need to use some unique visuals to make the painting look 3-dimensional. But our wizard paintings are different. Professor Charles waved his wand again, and another painting floated on the desk. This painting was exactly the same as the other one. The only difference was that the woman in this painting was twisting her body slightly and blinking at everyone. The sparrows behind her were jumping on the treetops, and people on the street were coming and going. A painting that moves is a normal painting. Hugo couldn't help but say. Basically, the whole class agreed with what he said, even Maureen was no exception. He had never seen a painting that didn't move. The drawings of wizards will basically move from the moment they are created. Even if you doodle a caterpillar in your textbook, it will wriggle on that page. But I'm not asking you to draw it now, Hugo. The slug you drew doesn't look very good. Professor Charles walked over to Hugo and tapped his desk gently. Hugo was sketching an ugly slug on the book. The drawing was crooked, but even so, the slug's tentacles were moving. Hugo stuck out his tongue and quickly used a pen to erase the slug. After the upper half of the slug was erased, only the tail was left twitching slightly, and it looked like it was dying. Professor, why do a wizard's drawings move? How can we make Muggle drawings move like wizards? Sweet, who was sitting in the corner, raised his hand and asked. Chapter 78 Talking Graffiti. Sweet seldom communicates with his classmates, but he always asks very targeted questions in every class, and everyone is used to it. Professor Charles smiled and said, the reason why wizards' paintings move is because each of you is a wizard. When you put pen to paper, your own magic has already fallen onto the paper through the brush in your hand, and all kinds of things in the painting will move. But how your paintings can move and the range of movement are related to your magical talent in painting. Different wizards have different vitality in their paintings. Maureen suddenly thought of circulate and the fat lady. He raised his hand and asked, Professor, do you mean that those people in the paintings who are more active and like to talk are all painted by wizards with high painting talents? Professor Charles nodded and said, that's right. The higher the talent of the wizard painter, the more active the work will be. So for us wizards, the evaluation of a painter's level depends on whether the people, animals, plants, etc. in the painting are active enough. Those people in the paintings who can actively communicate with people are all painted by talented painters. Ordinary painters will only communicate with people in other paintings in their portraits, and will not actively communicate with wizards. Maureen fell into deep thought, because he remembered something. The fat lady said that circulate was just a nobody painter, but circulate was the most active person in the painting he had ever seen besides the fat lady. This shows that the painter who created circulate should also be extremely talented, not a nobody as the fat lady said. Professor Charles continued, so you can also try to draw a character yourself to see if he can communicate with you. If he can, it means you have a talent for painting, and maybe you will be a great painter in the wizarding world in the future. I know you are itching to see if you have a talent for painting. I will give you 10 minutes to try. Professor Charles said sympathetically, and everyone in the class immediately took out their pens and papers excitedly, and some people simply scribbled directly on the books. Hugo drew a slug again, and this time the slug crawled around in the blank space of the book. It seems that I still have a talent for drawing, haha. Hugo kept poking the slug on the book with his pen. The crooked slug kept dodging to avoid Hugo's pen tip. Maureen also picked up a pen and drew a bee in the blank space on the book. His drawing was more abstract, with simple lines, not very similar in shape, and it was even difficult to tell whether it was a bee or fly. However, this unidentified flying insect with wings was also flying slowly between the lines on the page. This was not surprising to Maureen, because when he was bored at home when he was a child, he would scribble on the wall. Once he drew a huge caterpillar on the wall. Although it didn't look like a caterpillar, the caterpillar as thick as a wrist crawled around the walls and ceiling of the whole room. Grandpa Alton would always look for those crawling animal graffiti all over the house and erase the drawings from Maureen. You can try to draw a person to see if you can make it talk. I'll draw Lily. Hugo had already drawn a head. Maureen thought for a moment and nodded, then I'll draw my grandpa. I drew my grandpa when I was a kid, but I never heard the grandpa in the drawing speak. I think it was mainly because the drawing was terrible. Maybe I've improved a little now. Maureen drew a picture based on Grandpa Alton's appearance. His drawing skills were terrible, and his drawing of Alton didn't really look like him, but at least he had a nose and a mouth. As for the hair, he simply drew 2 hairs on the top of his head, because Grandpa Alton was bald anyway. After Maureen finished drawing, Alton in the book scratched his head and walked back and forth in the blank space. What's your name? Maureen asked tentatively. Alton in the drawing just blinked one eye, one big and one small. Maureen even forgot to add an eyebrow to one of the eyes, and then Alton let out a giggle. Huh? There is actually laughter. Maureen poked Alton in the painting with interest. Alton made a face and said angrily, "You hurt me." Wow, my painting can talk. Maureen found it incredible. Although the Alton he drew didn't look like his grandfather at all, the fact that he could talk was very telling. Hugo looked at Alton in Maureen's book with envy and said, "It seems that you have a magical talent for painting. Maybe you will be a painter in the future. I really hope that my painting can talk." He retracted his gaze and drew Lily. In fact, the Lily he drew didn't look like her at all. It can be said that any person's appearance is probably like this. If it weren't for the two braids, it would be impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. I drew Lily like this. She will definitely be angry, but I guess mine can't talk. Hugo poked Lily in the painting. Is my name Lily? What Hugo didn't expect was that the little person with braids and neither male nor female on Hugo's paper actually asked Hugo. Hugo opened his mouth wide, a little surprised. What? Can my drawings talk? I have a hidden talent for drawing. Maybe we can learn to draw to make a living after graduation. Maureen looked at the Alton she drew with interest, and then said, You talk to me. I won't talk to you, you tell me who I am first. Alton in the book didn't seem happy. How cool. Maureen hadn't drawn for a long time, and didn't expect that his casual doodles could talk like circulate and the fat lady. Yet, I thought my drawings could only spit fire. Hugo also looked particularly excited. When he usually cast magic, his wand would easily go off. Lily in the book was giggling at Hugo, and she found a place without words to sit down. Maybe there are many people in the class who can draw talking portraits. Hugo leaned out to look at other people's paintings. He knocked on a boy named Phoebe in front of him and asked, Phoebe, can your portrait talk? The latest novels are first published on the 6th book bar. Phoebe turned around and shook her head. The characters I drew can't even walk, they can only turn their heads and blink. My God. Your painting can actually walk. At this time, Lily in the textbook had stood up and walked around on the pages. It can talk, right, Lily? Hugo asked proudly. Yes, will I be called Lily from now on? Can I change my name? I want to be called Caroline. I just saw this name in the book. Lily in the book asked curiously. Okay, then you can be called Caroline. Hugo said indifferently. Phoebe was stunned. Maureen noticed that there was a caterpillar drawn on Phoebe's textbook, but the caterpillar only poked its head timidly and struggled to crawl, but failed. Okay, let's see how many people in the class have the magical talent for painting. Professor Charles said loudly. Chapter 79 The Magical Talent of Painting. Professor Charles walked around the classroom. Only 3 people in the class drew figures that could talk. Maureen, Hugo, and Sweet. Apart from the 3 of them, the people drawn by other students either had one leg stuck to the paper and couldn't move, or could walk on the paper but couldn't lift their arms. In either case, the people on the paper couldn't talk. Not bad, not bad. If you can draw the eyes more symmetrically and add eyebrows, it will be more perfect. Professor Charles said as he looked at Maureen's masterpiece. Maureen blushed slightly. His drawings couldn't actually be called drawings. They were more like graffiti. The details were not outlined. Although he had a magical talent for drawing, he didn't have the skills. Hugo was the same as him. There are only 3 of us in the class of 60 or 70 people. It's a surprise. Hugo was very excited. They had this class with Slytherin students. There were more students in the 2 colleges. Usually, no matter what magic he learned, he was at the bottom of the class. But this time, his magical talent for drawing was as good as Maureen. He reached out and touched Lily in the book again, but this time Lily in the book seemed a little tired. She opened her mouth but could not make any sound. Huh? Did the magic fail, Professor? Hugo looked up and asked Professor Charles in confusion. Yes, the magic failed. It only spoke a little at the beginning, but it stopped working later. And its movements will become slower and slower. In the end, it may just blink its eyes occasionally, stretch its legs, etc. If you want to keep the characters in the painting alive forever, you must use special drawing paper and frames to frame them, just like the paintings we saw in the castle. They have special drawing paper and frames, so they can stay alive forever. Professor Charles walked back to the podium and pointed at the moving wizard painting. The blonde woman in the painting did not seem to like talking, and she was disdainful of talking to students. In the end, she even walked out of the frame and ran to the Muggle frame next door. She took a look at the Muggle who looked the same as her but could not move. Her face changed drastically and she ran back in fear. Professor, is she afraid of people who can't move? Asked a boy in the front row. Professor Charles nodded and explained to everyone, there is no magical protection in the Muggle picture frame. It is a forbidden place for the people in the wizard's painting. If the people in the wizard's painting stay on the Muggle paper for too long, their magic will gradually lose effect and eventually be trapped in the Muggle's frame. Therefore, the people in the wizard's painting will instinctively leave the Muggle paper and return to their own frame. That is why Muggles rarely see moving figures in books, because the figures in wizard paintings will not stay. Everyone suddenly realized that this ensured that Muggle and wizard paintings would not visit in conflict with each other, and Muggles would not panic when seeing moving people in paintings. So Muggle paintings are essentially immobile, right, Professor? Sweet raised his hand and asked again. In principle, there is a kind of potion that can make Muggle paintings move when poured on Muggle paper. However, it does not last long, and the magic of the potion will soon fade away, so it is not recommended that you try to make Muggle paintings move. You can take a look. Professor Charles took out a black bottle from his pocket, waved his wand, and the cork jumped out and floated to the side. There were a few drops of green liquid in it, which were pulled by Professor Charles' wand and fell on the Muggle painting. The green potion disappeared in the Muggle painting. After a while, the woman in the Muggle painting slowly blinked her eyes, the sparrow on the branch began to spread its wings and flew up, and the pedestrians on the street behind began to talk and greet each other. All the students present felt that such paintings were normal paintings. Not only are there such differences between wizards' paintings and Muggles' paintings, but wizards' cameras and Muggles' cameras are the same. The negatives of photos taken by wizards all have special magic, but now Muggles don't use film negatives much, and have switched to digital recording. Some wizards are also studying and improving. At least we can now take more realistic color photos. Professor Charles then began to briefly introduce the development history of Muggle art paintings, especially several famous Muggle painters. The students in the class were not interested in these people. When Professor Charles talked about a painter who cut off his ears for some reason, Maureen couldn't help but think of Madonna, the president of the Magic Sound Club, who sucked the blood of mosquitoes. Those who play art are really freaks. Maureen couldn't help but mutter. Like wizards, the works of famous painters are all sought after. It is very simple for us wizards to judge the quality of a painting by looking at its level of activity. But Muggle paintings do not move, so they classify paintings into a series of schools, such as abstractionism, impressionism, realism and so on. To appreciate the works of Muggle painters, one can only rely on guessing and comprehension, to analyze the artistic conception of the paintings, and when appreciating them, one must also judge based on the painter's mood and the emotions expressed at the time. It is very complicated. The revealing potion that Professor Charles had just poured had gradually lost its effect, and the Muggle painting returned to its original appearance. Our wizards' paintings are different. The painter's mood and the artistic conception they express are all moving on paper. You can see the painter's emotions of survival in adversity from the salmon that occasionally jump out of a waterfall. A stone, a blade of grass, and an inconspicuous butterfly all contain the painter's soul, which is more profound and vivid than Muggle paintings. Appreciating Muggle paintings relies more on imagination, while appreciating wizard paintings requires observation. Professor Charles made a very thorough analysis of the difference between Muggles and wizards. Finally, he asked everyone to turn to the chapter on Muggle paintings. There are two paintings in it, one is a moving wizard painting, and the other is a non-moving Muggle painting. Go back and observe these two paintings carefully. What can you see from the Muggle and wizard paintings respectively? Write a simple 6-inch report and hand it in next week. Charles assigned homework. Many people looked depressed. Except for some students who are really interested in Muggles, studying Muggle courses is a torture for most people of wizard origin. The latest novels are first published on 6th Book Bar on September 9th. Another boring report. Why should we imagine what the Muggle paintings are expressing? Hugo began to pack up his books. He had just scribbled a lot of little people on his books. At first, they would communicate with him, but now they were sitting in one place and not talking. Fortunately, it's only 6 inches. The professor has not made it difficult for us. If we write a little bigger, it will be easy to fill the 6-inch parchment. The professor also said that appreciating Muggle paintings depends on imagination. Don't we usually rely on guessing when doing Muggle homework? Maureen was not interested in Muggle paintings. Anyway, they did the same thing when doing Muggle homework. When they couldn't write, they would use their imagination to guess a few sentences, write the words in a big size, and try to make the handwriting neater to get extra points on the paper. I really hope that Professor Charles is teaching a painting class. A gentleman like him shouldn't be teaching such a boring course. It will reduce his impression. But then again, this class is not completely useless, right? Hugo said excitedly. He accidentally discovered that he has a magical talent for painting. Although he still needs to improve his skills, being able to make the people in the painting speak is already very impressive. By the way, Last time you said you were going to investigate the similarities of the missing students. How is the investigation going? Maureen asked. Chapter 80 Commonalities. They left the classroom and walked to the balcony on the second floor. They found a place to sit down. Hugo took out a notebook from his book and said, "Currently, we know that there are 5 people who have lost their memory. One is Mosby from Hufflepuff, one is Delia from Ravenclaw, and the other is Jamie, Lily and me from our college. And Sweet," Maureen added. "But you can only go back to the past 5 times." Hugo said. "When you and Lily disappeared, Sweet also disappeared. This is very abnormal. And when Sweet came back that night, he looked very tired, just like you." Maureen replied. "He might be pretending, because you have begun to realize that he is inseparable from this matter, so he has to pretend to be stupid to deceive you." Hugo guessed. He never really believed in Sweet from the beginning to the end. Sweet usually behaved in a solitary manner and it was difficult for others to understand him. Hugo continued, "Think about it. He just said that it was boring for Madonna to sing the Dark Lord's funeral. If he was not related to the Death Eaters, how could he say that the Dark Lord's funeral was boring? I think the biggest possibility is that he is most likely the son of a Death Eater. The song The Dark Lord's Funeral was a popular song created to celebrate the fall of Voldemort. Students from wizarding backgrounds were basically familiar with this song. Once the single was released, it became popular in the entire wizarding world and was welcomed by many people. Many people would hum along." Maureen hesitated and said, "It's not appropriate to say this about Sweet. Unless we really have evidence, it's unwise to slander him at will." Although he thought Sweet was very strange, when Lily disappeared, Sweet was right in front of him, and he didn't see anything unusual about Sweet. Hugo opened his notebook and said, "Forget it, let's not talk about Sweet, let's first see what the 5 of us who have lost our memory have in common." Hugo has been very enthusiastic about this matter because he appeared in Professor Trelawney's prophecy. He has been asking people about other people's situations these days. First of all, we are all first-year freshmen, both boys and girls, which means it's not about gender. I suspected at first that someone wanted to attack pure-blooded wizards, but Mosby from Hufflepuff and Jamie from Gryffindor are both half-bloods, Delia is a Muggle-born, and Lily and I are both pure-blooded wizards, so this point is also ruled out. Wait, what is Sweet's origin? He is most likely a pure-blooded wizard like us, otherwise he wouldn't come to the Muggle Studies class," Maureen said. Hugo also wrote Sweet's name, and marked it as a pure-blood wizard, then frowned. "There is absolutely no extra information about a mysterious man in our dormitory. What else do you know about him except his name and origin? He is good at Quidditch? He doesn't like to talk and likes to be alone? Just write down some of them." "Yes, he doesn't like to talk. This means that the 6 of us have one less thing in common, because it's too difficult for me not to talk to others." Hugo pouted. He was also called by Professor Kane to comment on Quidditch matches because he often talked in class. He was completely different from Sweet, who was very frugal with words. Maureen took the notebook and looked at the series of common points recorded by Hugo about these amnesiac students. It must be said that Hugo was really attentive in investigating this matter. He even found out which magic course each person was good at. For example, Mosby performed better in charms and potions, Delia was good at transfiguration, and Jamie often added points for Gryffindor and herbology. As for Lily, Hugo recorded defense against the dark arts, potions, and Muggle studies for her. What about you? What are your strengths? Why didn't you write them down? Maureen asked. Hugo said embarrassedly, "I don't know. My wand often goes off when I cast magic. I am also confused in herbology and potions without a wand. I remember the theory of defense against the dark arts better than anyone else, but I still spit fire from time to time when casting defensive spells. Isn't there another course called astronomy? At least you can recognize the positions of the planets, so you can write about this." Maureen helped him record astronomy. Hugo shrugged his shoulders and didn't object. "Sweet looks like you're all-round, isn't he? Although he is slightly inferior to you in all aspects, I always see that his class assignments have high scores, so there's even less common ground." Hugo said. "He is different from me. He didn't make a mistake in the stars in astronomy class." Maureen continued to look at the notebook helplessly. "Then height and weight. You even know their height so clearly? You are amazing, but height shouldn't matter. I think everyone looks the same. As for weight, how did you find out Lily's weight? I thought girls pay much attention to privacy in this regard," Maureen said in surprise. Hugo lowered his voice and whispered, I didn't ask about their weight, but I measured it. I spent a lot of effort to secretly measure their weight. How did you measure it secretly? Maureen was very curious. Magic body scale card. Hugo smiled and took out a purple card from his school bag. The card looked very ordinary, just like a Muggle poker, with a dragon pattern drawn on it. This thing is not simple. As long as you hold it, your height and weight will be recorded by it. Even if you use the Polyjuice potion to become another person, it will still collect the real weight and height. Hugo explained. So amazing? But what is the meaning of this invention? Collecting other people's privacy everywhere? Maureen asked curiously. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Hugo smiled strangely. This thing was used by livestock farms to weigh meat animals. Wizards raised special meat animals and used a body scale to weigh them. Once they were fat enough, they could go to the slaughterhouse. Some magical animal research experts also used it to test a physical condition of wild dragons and unicorns. These animals are hard to get close to, so this came in handy. You can control them with a magic wand and stick them on them to show their size and weight. But later I found that this thing can also show a person's height and weight. Maureen always felt something was wrong when he heard Hugo's tone. It felt like wizards had become like those animals. They could be sent to the slaughterhouse after they were weighed and shaped. Where did you get it? Maureen asked. I got it from Uncle Charlie. He studied dragons in Romania and started a company with others. They successfully bred wild dragons. We can still eat stir-fried dragon liver in some restaurants, buy dragon leather gloves, or make ones and dragon blood for potion classes, etc. They provide many things related to dragons. Hugo said. So every time you go to touch their bodies with a magic body scale? Yes, I will pretend to ask, do you know what this is? Then they will take it and look at it, and the height and weight will be recorded. It can keep 5 records. You just need to remember the order of contact. Of course, it's even easier with Lily. There are many opportunities to attack her. You said proudly. Maureen laughed. Hugo was very thoughtful. It's a pity that the height and weight can't tell anything. Maureen flipped through the notebook where Hugo recorded, and then saw another data recorded by Hugo, and exclaimed softly. What's wrong? What do you find in common? It's not a common point, but a pattern. Don't you find that this set of data is very regular? Maureen said in surprise. Chapter 81 People born in double months. What's the pattern? Hugo asked in confusion. Birthday. Birthday? Everyone's birthday is different. Look, Mosby is February 12th, Jamie is June 14th, Delia is April 24th, Lily is October 20th, and I am August 18th. None of them are the same. Hugo said. According to the order in which you disappeared, Mosby was born in February, Delia was born in April, Jamie was born in June, you were born in August, and Lily was born in October. Can't you see it? They are all even months. And the dates are also even. Maureen circled everyone's birth date. Hugo suddenly realized, wait, so if Sweet is the 6th person, he is very likely to be born on an even day in December, right? We have to ask him, but it is very likely. Maureen rearranged Hugo's names. But why? Why would someone do this? Hugo didn't understand. Maureen pondered for a moment and said, I remember reading a book before that said that a person's birth is not accidental, but inevitable. When everyone is born, there are signs. It seems that, right, astronomy. Maureen took out the astronomy textbook from his school bag with great effort. They usually study astronomy not only to observe the position of the star map, but also to study the angles and signs between the planets. Although he was a mess in observing the star map of astronomy, he would still look at the angles between the planets. After all, these were also the contents of homework. Maureen opened the book and found the chapter Celestial Bodies and Destiny. He read, everyone will have signs when they are born. Some people's births will be accompanied by certain disasters. Some people's births may bring more luck to the world. Some people are destined to be born for a major event. For example, the famous Harry Potter, the child born at the end of July will defeat the Dark Lord. Professor Trelawney predicted before. Hugo interrupted. That's right. The book says that everyone is special. Thousands of things are closely related and restrain each other. These restrained relationships can be presented on celestial bodies. This is the secret of divination. So those of you who are born on even months and dates may have some special features. For example, Pluto was hit by a meteorite that day and formed a heart shape. Some black magic may need to use those of you who were born on even dates. Maureen guessed. Hugo's eyes lit up. In this way, we are indeed special. Professor Trelawney's prophecy may really be related to the birth dates of several of us. After all, she has already made a prophecy about a boy in July, right? Hugo was still quite in awe of Professor Trelawney. It was an honor for someone who could make a prophecy about defeating the Dark Lord to also make a prophecy for him. But was Sweet really born in December? Maureen pondered. Didn't you just say he was? If Sweet isn't, that means there should be another person born in December who will go missing and lose his memory. In that case, we need to find this person in advance and see if we can prevent this from happening. Maureen said. In fact, even if he found that person, he couldn't stop it, because he couldn't follow that person 24 hours a day, and he didn't know when he would go back to the past again. Then let's go ask Sweet now. Hugo stood up, put on his school bag, and straightened his chest. He looked very motivated. But then his stomach growled, and the sound was very aggrieved. Then let's go ask Sweet after lunch. Hugo changed his words. Maureen couldn't help laughing. He put away the astronomy textbook and rushed to the hall with Hugo. By the way, when were you born? February 29th. You can check this date through the astronomical divination astrology chart. It might be very special. Maybe the moon was hit by a meteorite, and maybe the crater was named after you. Yes, it's very special. Maureen showed an innocent smile. I can only have a real birthday once every 4 years. Ah. So miserable. Hugo looked at Maureen sympathetically and patted Maureen on the shoulder. I forgot that there were 29 days in February when we were born. But you can consider celebrating your birthday on February 28th every year. In the future, I will give you a birthday present on that day to comfort you. That's good, one more gift. Maureen smiled. In fact, his family celebrated his birthday on the 28th. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Anyway, a birthday is just a date, and it doesn't matter when it is celebrated. They went to the hall to eat and found Lily at the long table of Gryffindor. Lily didn't need to take the Muggle studies class, so she arrived in the hall earlier than them. Lily, you will never guess what we just found. There was a girl sitting next to Lily, but Hugo squeezed to Lily's side desperately, took out the notebook impatiently, and quickly explained the birth month on it. Are you still unwilling to give up the so-called prophecy of the chosen one? Lily didn't seem to believe Hugo's words. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Hugo said seriously, Lily, you have to face the reality. We are both chosen people. Don't you understand? And Hugo lowered his voice. If I'm not mistaken, you must have a cold mark on your back, right? Go look in the mirror. You may see a Death Eater or Grindelwald's mark. I'm not as boring as you. There is no mark on my back. Lily said without raising her head. Hugo continued unwillingly, Lily, don't be afraid that you are a Death Eater or something. It's no big deal. You can let Maureen touch your back to remove the mark. If you don't believe me, you can ask Maureen. He has the ability. He just needs to touch it. Shut up. Hugo. Lily glared at Hugo in anger, then turned to Maureen and shouted, Maureen, are you and Hugo so shameless? Hey? What's wrong with me? Maureen had just asked Toby to move aside and make room, and hadn't picked up the knife and fork yet, when Lily suddenly said this. You're still pretending to be stupid. Shameless. Lily stood up angrily and sat next to her roommate Gemma. Maureen opened his mouth and looked at Hugo in confusion. Did I do something? Why did Lily call me shameless? Hugo spread his hands. I don't know, she always makes such a fuss, doesn't she? I just told her that you can touch her back, and everything will be clear. You dare to say that to her? Maureen was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Lily is a girl. Hugo, what are you thinking? Is that a place that can be touched casually? Oh yes, I forgot this because I spoke too quickly. Hugo made a face. He and Lily were cousins, and they didn't care much about it usually, but Maureen and Lily were different. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Information about all wizards. After lunch, Maureen and Hugo ran to the library, because according to the usual habit, Sweet would not go back to the common room for lunch break, but would go to the library to read. They soon saw Sweet in an inconspicuous corner of the library. He is indeed a top student. Maybe I will see him somewhere here. Yes, Rose. Hugo curled his lips and saw his sister on the other side of the library, but he did not go over to say hello. Instead, he walked around from the other side of the bookshelf and walked towards Sweet. Sweet was flipping through a book and doing homework for the Muggle Studies class. Sweet, can I ask you something? Maureen sat on the chair opposite Sweet. Sweet looked up at Maureen, then lowered his head and continued to do his homework without speaking. Maureen was used to Sweet's attitude. He had thought of an excuse before he came. He said, Poke needs to register all the players' information. You know, it's the team report or something. He asked me to ask when your birthday is. Sweet paused for a moment, frowned, and then said, September 19th. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other. They had always guessed that Sweet was born in December, but they were wrong. Are you sure? Hugo was not giving up. Is it necessary to lie about this? Sweet responded indifferently. Maureen said, Sorry, your birthday has passed, we didn't know, otherwise we should celebrate your birthday. No need. Sweet always looked like he was keeping people at a distance. Hugo wanted to say something else, but Maureen had already pulled him away and left the library. He might be lying. Hugo said impatiently in the corridor on the 5th floor. But maybe it's true. Maureen walked up the spiral escalator, and Hugo and he waited for a moment on the landing of the stairs, then the stairs under their feet began to change, turned to the 8th floor, and walked towards the common room. If it's not a mysterious person in our dormitory, it means that there is another missing person. We should look for the list of students born in December, but how can we ask who was born in December among so many students? Hugo said. Maureen couldn't explain this. They returned to the common room and found that the family owl Beretta was waiting for him at the window. My grandfather replied. I'll go and see it first. Maureen ran to the window, took the envelope on Beretta's feet, and unfolded the letter. Dear Maureen, I'm glad that you have become a member of the Gryffindor team. This is really unexpected. If you need a flying broom to reply to the letter, I will buy it for you. You mentioned animals that can be invisible all the time. I think there is no animal that can be invisible all the time except the Thestrals. Speaking of astronomical divination, I don't have any better suggestions. Divination is something mysterious, and no one in our family is a fortune teller. It doesn't matter. As long as you don't work in the Department of Magical Mysteries in the future, it doesn't matter if you are not good at astronomy and divination. The Department of Mysteries needs wizards who are absolutely excellent in divination. They rely on divination to control the population base of wizards. This is confidential and I can't say too much. But they were careless and accidentally missed your name back then. I ran to add it. I think you are not destined to work in the Department of Mysteries. I have never heard of the magic of heterochromatic eyes you mentioned. Don't mind it. The Sorting Hat may just be joking with you. I rescued that photo album. Next time I won't bring Muggle soda bottles home. Don't worry. Love you, young grandfather who is wearing a pair of newly bought pink plush Muggle slippers today. Maureen looked at the letter sent by mail. He stopped his eyes at what Grandpa Alton said. The Department of Mysteries needs wizards who are absolutely excellent in divination, thinking of the content of the chapter Celestial Bodies and Destiny in the astronomy book. It was as if a light flashed in his mind, and he suddenly thought of something. Have you figured out how to investigate everyone's birthdays? Hugo asked as he sat on a chair. Maureen took out Hugo's notebook, stared at the numbers, and continued, Hugo, have you ever thought about this? There are so many first-year students at Hogwarts. If someone really wants to perform some black magic based on their birth dates, how does he know the students' detailed birth dates? Hugo thought for a moment and nodded. He was also quite puzzled about this. I'm also thinking about this. How did the person who made us amnesiac know exactly when we were born? Maureen replied, my grandfather said that the staff of the Department of Mysteries must be proficient in divination magic. This reminds me of one thing. Each of us wizards will receive a letter from Hogwarts School after we meet the age requirements. Why does the school know that we meet the admission requirements? This should be some wizards in the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic using divination to infer the birth date of each wizard and then hand it over to Hogwarts School. In other words, only the school and the Ministry of Magic know the birth date of each of our new students who are about to enter school. The latest novel is first published on 6th Book Bar. Yes, I know about this. Every wizard carries a tracer on him before he reaches adulthood. The Ministry of Magic uses the tracer to detect whether we use magic outside of school. James secretly used magic at home last summer and received a warning letter. Hugo's eyes widened suddenly. You mean, the people behind us are from the Ministry of Magic or the teachers in the school? But then he said a little uneasily, the teachers should not attack us. As for the Ministry of Magic, they can't just sneak into the school without being discovered, and the Ministry of Magic is to ensure the order and stability of the wizarding world, isn't it? Maureen said seriously, have you forgotten one thing? A week before we started school, the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic was invaded, and there was news that the time converter was stolen. At that time, the Aurors were chasing a fugitive with all their might. The wanted criminal you subdued, Hugo said quickly. Maureen didn't have time to correct Hugo about who subdued Pretty. He continued, yes, it was Pretty, but Pretty was captured by the Aurors and sent to Azkaban. They tortured Pretty in various ways. I think with the Ministry of Magic's ability, there is no shortage of wizards who are proficient in truth serum or legilimency, but Pretty didn't know where the time converter was. He was more like a scapegoat. His memory was modified before he was arrested. Our memories seem to have been modified or deliberately forgotten. Under Maureen's guidance, Hugo gradually sorted out his thoughts. If I guess correctly, the time converter must have been brought to Hogwarts by the wizard who broke into the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic. Maybe he also stole a list of the new students of Hogwarts this year in the Department of Mysteries, so he knew which student's date of birth met the requirements of the black magic, and just found you guys. Maureen found that this could explain how the person behind the scenes could know the students' dates of birth. Chapter 83 Doubt. So we are facing a dark wizard who can break into the Department of Mysteries and has a time turner? But an adult wizard wandering around the school will definitely be discovered, right? Hugo said in surprise. If it is really an adult dark wizard, that is indeed the case. What if he has another identity? Maureen said. By the way, unless he disguised himself as a student with a Polyjuice potion, for example. Hugo carefully glanced around and whispered, the mysterious man in our dormitory. This explains why he goes to the Forbidden Forest early every morning. He must be tired of being an adult and becoming a student, and wants to change back to himself every day to get some fresh air. Sweet is indeed a very strange person. He usually appears and disappears from time to time. He seems to have a lot to do with those missing people every time. Hugo suspects that there is nothing wrong with him. Maureen said, at present, we can't suspect Sweet just based on this. We can use a method to confirm whether he is an adult in disguise. What method? Hugo asked hurriedly. Your magic body scale. Didn't you say it can measure a person's real weight and height? Polyjuice potion can't be disguised. In that case, if we just let Sweet touch it, we can probably know if he is transformed by Polyjuice potion. Maureen said. Hugo's eyes lit up. Yes. How could I forget this? If he is an adult in disguise, his height and weight will be different. So this matter. Same as always, I'm good at it, leave it to me. I can use the same trick again and pretend to ask him if he recognizes this thing. When he takes it and looks at it, I will take it back. Hugo said confidently. He has already used this method to secretly measure the height and weight of Mosby and others. He is already familiar with it. Don't go through so much trouble, just put it on Sweet's bed. When he comes back at night, he will definitely find it. When he picks it up, you can just say it's his. Maureen suggested. Hugo stroked his chin and nodded, your idea is better. Then he said uneasily, if he is really a dark wizard in disguise, I won't be able to sleep well in the future. The two of us together may not be his opponent. We don't need to be his opponent. Maureen said simply, if he is really an adult wizard in disguise, just find an opportunity to cast a binding spell on him from behind, tie him up for an hour, and wait for the Polyjuice potion to lose its effect. That doesn't seem to be fair, right? Hugo said in surprise. Come on. We are two first-year rookies. Do you still expect us to bow, turn around and walk a few steps, and then draw our wands to shoot at each other like in a wizard duel? We are subduing criminals, not arguing with people. We don't need to care so much. Maureen said without thinking. He might consider principles when doing other things, but it would be stupid to be stubborn and think about being fair in the face of such things. What if our binding spell is blocked by him? Hugo asked. Then fire an explosion spell. Fire a spell. Attract everyone's attention. If we can't subdue him, can't we attract the teacher's attention? If he is a dark wizard, he is most afraid of being watched by others. Then he will be guilty and will be exposed. He can't make a fuss in school. Maureen said. You are really good at it. Hugo laughed. Maureen fed the owl Beretta some food and wrote a simple reply to his grandfather. He thought about it and decided not to buy a flying broom. The flying broom in school can still be used. It is better to save money. The two of them rushed to the afternoon defense against the dark arts class. Lily was still angry with him and didn't sit with him, so they discussed the mastermind behind Pre for a whole class, but the clues they had were too few, and it was not difficult to explain the whole thing well. At night, Hugo and Maureen returned to the dormitory very early. They put the magic bodyguard on Sweet's bed and waited until 11 o'clock before Sweet came back from outside. Maureen and Hugo were pretending to play wizard chess. The chess pieces on the chessboard were all talking, communicating with each other and giving advice to the players. The chess pieces on the chessboard were noisy, most of which were Maureen's chess pieces. He moved the chess pieces carelessly and accidentally made the bishop chess piece move sideways. The bishop chess piece was yelling at Maureen in anger, "I can only move diagonally. Do you know how to play wizard chess?" "Oh, shut up. Of course I can." Maureen moved the bishop's position again, but the bishop yelled again, "You will lose me if you move like this. Don't you see its queen there?" Before the bishop chess piece finished speaking, Hugo's queen brutally smashed Maureen's bishop chess piece into two halves and threw it out of the chessboard. "It's much quieter to die," Maureen muttered. He was not paying attention to playing chess. Even if the whole situation on the chessboard was undoubtedly assured defeat, he didn't care much. "He's going to pick it up," Hugo said silently to Maureen. He could have used the queen to checkmate Maureen's king, but he moved the queen away and didn't finish immediately. Hugo's queen also shouted in dissatisfaction, "Hey, you can already kill the king. Why are you doing this? Can you just go wherever I tell you to go?" "I'm discussing more advanced chess skills with Maureen. What do you know?" Hugo rudely grabbed the queen and put it anywhere on the chessboard. His queen was immediately knocked down by Maureen's knight chess piece and kicked out of the chessboard. The chess pieces on the chessboard no longer dared to make a fuss, because the bishop and queen who talked the most just now were arbitrarily sentenced to death. The other chess pieces on the chessboard were scared, afraid that they would also die because of their talkativeness. Hugo and Maureen played chess in a mess, and winning or losing was no longer that important. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Sweet has already picked up the weighing card. "Hey, Sweet, that card is mine. I was just wondering where I accidentally dropped it. It turned out to be on your bed. Can you give it back to me?" Hugo immediately stood up and walked over to say. Sweet frowned and handed the weighing card to Hugo silently without saying anything. Hugo ran back in a guilty conscience. When Sweet turned to the bathroom to change into pajamas, he immediately picked up the card and took a look. Maureen also came over. "It's not him. He is 2 inches taller than me and weighs less than me. It's unbelievable." Hugo looked a little disappointed. "Isn't it better? At least you can sleep well at night. We have confirmed that he is a normal person, right?" Maureen put away the wizard chess pieces that were trembling with fear, and then climbed back into his bed. He was relieved. In fact, he didn't want Sweet to be an adult wizard in disguise. This alone can't clear him of suspicion. Maybe he is that person's accomplice. Hugo threw the body scale card into the bedside table. Sweet had changed into pajamas, walked out of the bathroom, climbed onto the bed, and pulled down the bed curtains as usual to cover himself. Maureen lay on the bed. He now needed to think carefully about how to find the person who had all the information about the new students. Chapter 84: Strong Team and Weak Team. The whole thing still had no clues. Even if they found the pattern of students who lost their memory, if they didn't know the birth months of all the students, they still couldn't know who would be in trouble next. Hugo was still very eager to investigate this matter, so he would take the opportunity to chat with other students every time he was in class and ask about other people's birthdays. "I've asked more than a dozen people, but there's not a single person who meets the requirements. Garth from Ravenclaw was born in December, but he was born on the 11th. Hugo said with some regret. "There are at least 200 first-year students in the 4 colleges, right? I guess you won't get any results if you keep asking like this." Maureen shook his head. He was taking an herb class and shoveling a pile of dragon dung into a flower pot. There was a dark red fire-breathing orchid in the flower pot. Once this plant senses danger, it will spray out some juice, and the juice will catch fire when it meets the air, so they must be careful to be friendly to the fire-breathing orchid and not let it feel threatened. Then what should we do? Wait for the same thing to happen again? What if the last student is found by him and the black magic is completed? Isn't it too late? Hugo reached out and touched a red spot in the middle of the fire-breathing orchid. As long as he gently stroked its red spot, the fire-breathing orchid would not spit fire temporarily. Their task was to fertilize the fire-breathing orchid and trim its branches and leaves. We don't know what these so-called black magics are yet. Apart from the marks of Grindelwald and Voldemort, there is nothing strange. Your mark was also wiped off by me inexplicably. Maureen wore fireproof dragon leather gloves and carefully picked up the scissors. He and Hugo worked together to deal with the fire-breathing orchid. When the scissors approached, the fire-breathing orchid shook obviously, and the tip of the leaf curled up and pointed at him. Hugo hurriedly kept touching the red spot to calm the fire-breathing orchid. Aren't there other people? For example, Lily, do you think the mark on her back is Grindelwald or Voldemort? Hugo turned his head and glanced at Lily, who had ignored the two of them in recent days, curious. Who knows? Anyway, we don't have a chance to see her back. Maureen cut off the extra leaves of the fire-breathing orchid. The fire-breathing orchid trembled, and sparks came out of the tips of the remaining leaves. I hope it's a Death Eater. That would be more fun. You know, her father is the man who defeated Voldemort. It's terrible if the Savior's daughter has the mark of a Death Eater. Hugo smiled with a bit of gloating, and then his hand trembled and left the red spot. The fire-breathing orchid burst into flames. He screamed and stepped back quickly. Maureen was also startled, and the flames sprayed on his dragon leather gloves. Pay attention. Maureen retracted his hand. Fortunately, the dragon leather gloves were of guaranteed quality and were impervious to water and fire, so his hands were not burned. Sorry, Professor Longbottom said that this fire-breathing orchid is not mature and the flame temperature is not high. Are you okay? Hugo looked apologetic. It's your turn this time. You're not afraid of fire anyway. Maureen handed the scissors to Hugo. Hugo's wand often caught fire accidentally, so he was familiar with fire. Then take out your wand, just in case. Once it spurts fire, freeze the flame. Although Hugo was used to the magic he cast often with fire, being burned by fire was not a fun thing. Then he said, seriously, you have to teach me the spell to freeze the flame, so that my wand won't be able to suppress the fire all the time. I've taught you no less than 20 times, but you are not suitable for using this spell. It will only make the flame more fierce. Maureen shook his head. There is also a Quidditch match this Saturday, Slytherin vs. Ravenclaw. Hugo needs to comment on this game, and all the people in the Gryffindor team are also required by poker to be present. Slytherin and Ravenclaw are both strong teams. You must have a general understanding of them before you meet them. Poker's expression was very serious. Poker, there are only 4 teams in the school, 2 of which are strong teams. Hufflepuff also has a versatile player named Nooster, and their team is not weak either. When you say that, it seems that only Gryffindor is the weak team. James was bored and pointed his wand at a quaffle flying up and down. We are not a weak team. We have a secret weapon. Poker looked at Maureen with appreciation. It's no longer a secret, Poker. Maureen spread his hands. He had become a celebrity in the school for a while. Almost everyone knew him, and people were looking at him wherever he went. Yes, he will become a moving rake for other teams. Believe me, it was like this when I first joined the team. James turned to Maureen and said, being a celebrity is very tiring, because there will always be people who want to defeat you to prove themselves. James's identity made him never low-key wherever he went. When he first went to school, he caused a much bigger sensation than Maureen. After all, the son of the famous Harry Potter was enrolled, and he was arrested and exhibited. But when you teach them a lesson with a bludger, they won't dare to go too far next time. Albus shook his hands and said calmly, when I first joined the team last year, a 7th-year Ravenclaw boy always hit me with a bludger in every game. Later, he didn't dare to do it anymore. What happened to him? Maureen asked curiously. I teamed up with James in one game and knocked him off his broomstick with a bludger. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Albus said leisurely. James and Albus stretched out their hands at the same time and clapped their hands proudly. Maureen couldn't help but admire them. The Potter brothers are really amazing. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen will be a secret weapon. Poke ignored James and Albus and said confidently, you showed amazing talent in your first game. Other teams will definitely target you next time, but they don't know what position you play. This is our advantage, because you can appear in any position at any time. You don't have to start, wait for you to be replaced at halftime and catch them off guard. This is Poke's plan. Because the school team now starts to use substitutes, Poke can make good use of the opportunity to replace players. In addition, Maureen plays very well in any position, and the feasibility of tactics is increasing. Therefore, he has become a weapon that Gryffindor cannot predict. Recently, Poke has been looking for Maureen for special training, as if to make up for his contempt for Maureen. Sometimes when Maureen goes to the toilet, Poke will suddenly jump out of the cubicle next to him and tell him the latest tactics outside the toilet door, which makes Maureen very annoyed. Hugo had already started explaining the match between Slytherin and Ravenclaw outside. They all left their locker rooms and walked to the platform outside the locker rooms. Poke began to explain to everyone the strengths of the two teams, who they needed to pay attention to, and so on. But in fact, Maureen had heard all of this, because Poke had already written down the information of the other players on paper, giving each player a copy. He was just repeating the information written on paper. Maureen's attention was not on the game, he was thinking about tomorrow's affairs. Last week, the weird Arnold asked him to meet him at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Maureen was still hesitating whether to go or not. Going meant violating the school rules again, although for Maureen, violating the school rules did not make him feel so guilty. He was not a person who followed the rules. We have to figure out Sir Cadogan's matter first. Maureen pondered secretly. In addition to Sir Cadogan, Arnold seemed to know some secrets of Maureen's heterochromatic eyes. These were all the reasons why Maureen wanted to meet him. Chapter 85 Quidditch Tactics. Slytherin and Ravenclaw are indeed strong teams. Scorpius Malfoy is also a chaser for Slytherin. He performed very well and threw 12 quaffles, winning 120 points for Slytherin. Ravenclaw is also very strong. The score between them and Slytherin was very close. At the last moment, they even surpassed Slytherin by 20 points. However, Slytherin's Seeker caught the Golden Snitch and won an extra 150 points. In the end, Slytherin defeated Ravenclaw 400-270. See, although Slytherin won this game, they did not win easily. Ravenclaw lost because of luck. If they caught the Golden Snitch, the victory of this game would belong to them. Poker was still analyzing the situation of this game to his teammates. The score between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff is 370-210. According to the points rule, Slytherin has a total of 40 points, temporarily ranking first. Gryffindor has a total of 37 points, ranking second. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff have 27 and 21 points respectively. The competition is a round-robin mechanism. Next week Gryffindor will play against Ravenclaw. Everyone should go back and be prepared now. Know your opponent clearly and don't slack off. Pork encouraged the team members and said at the end, I will see if I can apply for a training ground tomorrow. If possible, everyone must attend the training. I will ask Madam Hooch now. Pork, I have something to do tomorrow, Maureen shouted hurriedly from behind. We both have something to do. James and Albus shouted in unison. Cancel all your things. Pork ignored him and ran to the cheering Slytherin students to find Madam Hooch. He is such a training maniac. Doesn't he know that it is very rude to occupy other people's weekends? What if someone has something urgent? James said angrily. Come on, what urgent things can you two have? You are still going to Weasley's joke shop in Hogsmeade to buy goods. If you continue to do this, your mother will be unhappy. Lily said with a pout. Albus coughed twice and said seriously, Lily, you have to be clear. Your two uncles are in this business. They make a lot of gold galleons. How much did you make by sticking to your job? That's not the point. If you fail the IELTS exam, you will be laughed at when you go out without a diploma in the future. Lily retorted. Oh my god. Our silly girl, have you been too close to Rose recently? James sniffed in surprise and sniffed twice in Lily's direction. Why do you smell like Rose's academic perfume? Maureen couldn't help laughing beside him. Lily turned her head and glared at Maureen. What are you laughing at? Maureen shrugged innocently. No, I was just laughing. Lily turned around angrily and ignored them. She walked to the corner of the locker room and sat on a chair. Pork soon ran back excitedly and shouted, MRS. Hooch agreed to lend us the Quidditch field. Fortunately, I arrived a minute early because the captain of Ravenclaw just went to apply for the field. But first come first served. You know, no one is allowed to miss training tomorrow. Maureen and the Potter brothers looked very frustrated. I should have cast a full body binding spell on Pork just now. It only took 1 minute. James was still a little annoyed when he walked to the castle. Maureen silently praised James' words. On Sunday, the weather was a little gloomy and there was no sun. Pork brought everyone to the Quidditch field early in the morning. Everyone looked like they were still asleep, except Pork, who looked very energetic, holding his broom high in his hand, as if he was holding the Quidditch trophy. "Come on, everyone," Pork said with a beaming face, "the early bird catches the worm." "Pork, we are riding on brooms early in the morning like early birds, your words are unlucky," James complained. "Shut up. Listen quietly. We are going to implement a fifth set of combat plans. Lily and Sweet, you two may also be arranged to play. Show the enemy weakness, take advantage of their unpreparedness, and then attack them with strength. We must use the combat ideas of Sun's Art of War," Pork said. "Excuse me? What art of war?" Maureen asked, puzzled. "The Art of War by Sun Tzu, a very famous strategic book translated from the East by the Muggle world. I have a translated copy at home. Human thought is very great. Whether it is Muggles or wizards, they can learn from each other. Poker was born a Muggle. His father was a Muggle officer. There were many military books at home. Poker knew Muggle things since he was a child. Since he came from Hogwarts, his favorite thing to do is to combine Muggles' combat thinking and study various Quidditch tactics." Everyone looked confused, especially Maureen, who was familiar with Muggles. Then Poker spent an hour telling everyone what tactics they were going to try and how they came about. Maureen was confused. Once it came to Muggle knowledge, Maureen's brain seemed to be unable to keep up. He could hear Poker talking about knowing yourself and the enemy, but what he thought in his mind was that the roasted snakeskin taro just now was really delicious. "Okay, everyone understands? Any questions?" An hour later, Poker asked with satisfaction. Philia was yawning beside him. Diana and Owen were blinking desperately to avoid looking sleepy. Lily was rubbing her face beside him. Sweet lowered his head and wondered what he was thinking. Maureen was wondering in his mind. James and Albus were leaning against the wall, their eyes half open and half closed. Pork clapped his hands and woke everyone up. "The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Oh, have you finished talking about the storm tactics? How do the chasers cooperate with the seekers?" James asked in a daze. "The storm tactics have been finished. I just talked about the double-winged tactics. Don't you understand the storm tactics? Then let me repeat it again. Specifically, the seekers temporarily assist the chasers, using the up and down tactics to avoid the interference of the opponent." Pork seemed very interested and continued to talk about it in a torrent of words, very responsible. Everyone stared at James with resentment, blaming him for being too talkative. James also wanted to slap himself. Another hour passed. "Okay. Let's start training now," Pork said confidently. Everyone finally rode on the flying brooms. The wind on the Quidditch field made everyone sober up a lot. No one listened to a word of the storm tactics Pork talked about in the morning. During the training, they did not meet Pork's expectations at all. Everyone flew around blindly, and the whole field was filled with Pork's angry roar. In the end, Pork increased the number of irritable bludgers to 10. The 10 restless bludgers tried desperately to knock them down. Everyone was on edge. After Owen's nose was hit by a bludger and bleeding, Diana fell from a height of 2 meters, and Philia's head was hit with a bump. This training has become very difficult. "Pork, if this goes on, we won't have to wait for Ravenclaw to beat us." James shouted. "Really, you beat us first." Maureen had been waiting for Pork to finish the game the whole morning. He also had to meet Arnold to ask about Circuit, but Pork insisted on letting everyone train until 11:30 before letting everyone go to eat. "Oops, I'm late." Maureen hurried back to the dormitory, took the disguise hat that James lent him, and rushed directly to the kitchen in the basement instead of going to the hall for lunch. Chapter 86, Appointment. Fortunately, there were enthusiastic house elves busy in the kitchen. When Maureen said he didn't have lunch, Lulu quickly prepared 2 chicken legs and a paper bag of roasted snakeskin taro for Maureen. "Thank you, Lulu." Maureen really liked Lulu, the considerate house elf. He just casually asked if there was any roasted snakeskin taro, and Lulu gave him a bag. "You're welcome, sir. I'm at your service at any time." Lulu pulled the rope of the minecart. Maureen's lunch was solved on the minecart, which was also a strange experience. After all, not everyone has an appetite to eat on a speeding minecart that jumps up and down and shakes left and right. When he left the abandoned hut on the farm and came to the camphor tree in Hogsmeade, it was already past 12 o'clock. There was no one under the camphor tree. and Arnold did not appear under the camphor tree. Has he left? Maureen was a little disappointed. He was also secretly annoyed. Arnott had asked him to come here at 10 o'clock last week, but because of the delay in Quidditch training today, he broke the appointment himself. This matter was also his fault. If Arnott was not here, there would be no point in him coming to Hogsmeade Village. It seemed that not everyone in Hogsmeade knew about Sir Cadogan. Maureen even suspected that Sir Cadogan might not have any descendants left. He sat on a bench under the camphor tree and looked around. Today was a cloudy day with no sun. It seemed that it was about to rain heavily, but there were still many students walking in groups on the street. He could only tighten his disguise hat slightly and try not to be noticed by others. After sitting for about 10 minutes, Maureen was still wondering whether he should return to school when a figure swaggered over from the corner next to the Sissic potion shop in front. Maureen was overjoyed. This person was Arnott. Maureen figured that Arnold must have been unable to wait to go home for lunch, so he felt he needed to apologize first, so he quickly stood up and said, "Mr. Arnold, I'm sorry." Arnold walked towards Maureen with a cane, looking very leisurely, sat on a chair, interrupted Maureen leisurely, and said, "Young man, have you been waiting for 3 hours? Very good, you haven't left after waiting for so long, which shows that you're a patient young man." "Huh?" Maureen didn't react. "What do you mean, huh? I was late on purpose, what's the matter?" Arnott put his crutches aside proudly, a hint of cunning in his water-blue eyes. "This is a test for you to see if you have patience. If you can't even wait for 3 hours, that is not the attitude of humbly seeking advice." Maureen was astonished. "Mr. Arnott, you came here at this time on purpose?" Arnott snorted and admitted generously, "Yes, do you have any objection?" Arnott then muttered to himself, "Let you know how it feels to wait for others. After all, I waited for 5 hours last week. Letting you wait for me for 3 hours is already a bargain for you." Maureen didn't hear clearly what Arnott said at the end, and asked puzzledly, "What did you say about waiting for 5 hours?" "Nothing, anyway, it's always good for young people to wait more." Arnott leaned his hand on the back of the chair, tapping the chair lightly, looking very calm. Maureen's expression was a little strange. He wanted to laugh, but he held it back. He was thinking whether he should tell Arnold that he was delayed today and was more than 2 hours late instead of waiting for 3 hours. After all, he had just arrived for less than half an hour. But after thinking about it, he decided not to tell it. "You are right, sir, I did wait." Maureen tried hard to hold back his laughter. "It's been a while, young people should wait a little longer." He was still feeling guilty about Arnold. He thought it was very rude to be late for an appointment with an old man, but who would have thought that Arnold, this weird old man, would deliberately make fun of him? As a result, Maureen was more than 2 hours late, but arrived more than 10 minutes earlier than Arnold. "It's good that you understand." Arnold didn't know how long Maureen had been waiting, and motioned for Maureen to sit down. Maureen sat back on the bench and asked, "Then Mr. Arnott, can you tell me where Sir Cadogan's home is now?" "No hurry." Arnott looked up at the dark clouds in the sky, took out his pocket watch to check the time, and said, "It will rain in 9 minutes. Wait until you master the magic I taught you." Maureen did not ask how Arnott knew that it would rain in 9 minutes. After all, the wizarding world has a special star forecast that can predict this. Every Tuesday and Thursday, they have to listen to the weather forecast on the radio, which can be accurate to the minute, so Maureen did not think much about it. "You want to teach me magic?" Maureen was a little surprised. "But why do you want to teach me magic specifically?" "Because I like you. Teaching you to master some magic will not be a disadvantage in the future," Arnott said casually. "Is it that simple? The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. How complicated can you think?" Arnott asked. Maureen pondered for a moment. He and Arnott had only met once. Maureen didn't even know who Arnott was. It didn't seem wise to rashly learn other people's magic. "Are you worried that I will teach you black magic?" Arnott raised his eyebrows. Maureen did not deny it either. "To be honest, yes." "Then what do you think is black magic?" Arnott continued to ask. Maureen couldn't help but think of the 100 weird ways to die in the wizarding world that Professor Francis often used to threaten everyone. Those strange and dangerous magic items were all black magic in his eyes. Our school has a defense against the dark arts class. Those magic items or spells that torture people, cause disability or death are all black magic," Maureen said. Arnott laughed. "Your view of black magic is the same as most people's. Too phenomenological. When a kind of magic causes irreversible damage to people in a weird way, it is regarded as black magic. This is very one-sided. You have to understand one thing. Magic itself is neither good nor bad. Only the wizards who use magic have differences in good and evil. No magic is born dark. It mainly depends on how the wizard uses it. Maureen asked puzzledly, what about the 3 unforgivable curses in the rumor? They are so evil. Aren't they specially invented to suppress and dominate the black magic of others? Otherwise, what is the meaning of their existence? Arnok looked at Maureen. His blue eyes were so similar to the color of Maureen's left eye, like a pool of clear water. Maureen could even see his own reflection in Arnok's eyes. Do you think the 3 unforgivable curses were invented to create panic? Do you know the origin of the 3 unforgivable curses? Arnok asked. Chapter 87 is available. This book is now on the shelves. I will change it to 3 chapters a day in the next 2 weeks. I will write faster. Otherwise, 2 chapters a day is always too little. By the way, I would like to ask for votes. How can I say this? I can't bear to look at the data of this book. It may be because it is not a time travel novel, so it is not very popular, or people don't like to read this type of novel. It has been forgotten. It's all tears to talk too much. I still hope that everyone will support me so that I can have the motivation to continue writing. Writing a sequel is a bit thankless, because those fanfictions that write time travel novels have a main storyline, such as Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in the first part and the Chamber of Secrets in the second part. This kind of mainline is arranged. You just need to participate in Harry's mainline and write your own things. For writing a sequel, the main line is original and not linked to the main line of the original work, but it cannot be said to be completely original. It is somewhere in between. I have to respect the settings of the original work everywhere. I can't change what the original work says. I can only write what is not said by myself. That is, I use the worldview and background of Harry Potter to write my own things. This is very restrictive for creation. Like other people who travel through time, if you have no ideas, you can use the plot of the original novel to make a transition and write some of the original content. When I write a sequel, I have no ideas and can only scratch my head. This does not mean that travel through time is bad, because that kind of novel is also very interesting. You can change the settings of the original novel, be bold, and go into the world with Harry, and you can also predict the development of the plot. That style is also very interesting and mainstream. If I were to construct a novel by myself, I could be imaginative and write whatever I think of, and I could make sense of anything. But writing a sequel is not possible. I cannot change the settings of the original novel, and I have to respect the original novel. The restrictions are very large. But with such a large restriction, why do I still write this novel? Because I like Harry Potter, and I think there are many things that Rowling did not say in the Harry Potter novels, so I want to make up for the regret, so I often write some fun magic in life. I feel that magic should run through life, so I describe those farms, student clubs, and the magic of painting, etc. The protagonist is not strong enough now because he does not know much magic. Learning requires a process and cannot be achieved overnight. When writing some settings, some people may question it. Some people say that it is not a victory if the chaser catches the Quidditch, and it is considered a victory only if the seeker catches it. In fact, if you think about it carefully, you will know that there is no difference at all. If the chaser catches the golden snitch and then hands it to the seeker, does it also count as the seeker catching it? The principle is the same. It's like a goalkeeper in football. You kick the ball hard and fly across the field, and accidentally shoot it. Doesn't this ball count? The goalkeeper did the work of the striker and won a point, which is the same as the chaser doing the work of the seeker. But it doesn't matter if you question it. There is progress only when there is questioning. If I made a mistake by carelessness, you can find it out, at least it won't become a joke. There are many reasons for poor performance, which may be the writing style, the characterization, the niche genre, or the lack of imagination. Anyway, just look for the reasons from yourself first. I hope everyone will promote my novel more and let more people know about it. Only when someone reads it can I continue to write. The rule for adding more chapters is temporarily set as follows: add 1 chapter for every 500 recommendation votes, that is, 1,500 or 2,000. I only have more than 1,300 now. This requirement should not be too high. Looking at those books with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of recommendation votes, I am too embarrassed to ask for monthly votes. If you have some, please vote. If you don't have monthly votes, please vote for a few recommendation votes. If you don't have recommendation votes, please subscribe to support. Subscription is very important. Please support. Thank you to the book friends Yao Ming Ziayu, Passing by the Melon Crowd, Zia Sheng Wongayu, Yao Ihu, Shulkishan, Wu Ai, Remix, Book Friends 20170727081449390 inches, Little Monsters and Boss, 02111A, Guan Shanlin, Lazy Cat and Blog, Mangni Uchun's Honswane Liu, Lef Yokia Oren, Book Friends 150,826,231,003,768, Zhang Yuwen, Qi Jinang, and for the rewards. And to those book friends who voted for me every day, thank you. 4 chapters were updated today. Chapter 88 Death and Rebirth. Avada Kedavra, soul leaving the body, heart dropping and bones grooving. Any of these 3 unforgivable curses, if used on a person, is enough to put him in Azkaban wizard prison for life, especially Avada Kedavra, which kills people without being seen, which is terrifying and makes everyone shudder. I don't know, but they really shouldn't exist, right? Maureen said uncertainly. Arnold nodded, but did not answer immediately, and continued to ask, you first-year students should have learned the origin of the wand and the history of magic. Can you tell me where the wand came from? Maureen was about to answer, but he suddenly frowned. Sir, I didn't tell you that I was a first-year student. Arnold tapped the back of the chair with his fingers, pretending to be mysterious and said, you don't need to tell me, I can also see that you are a first-year student. Why? Because the way you cast magic is too immature, and second-year students are more skilled. Arnold said. So you used to be a teacher at the school, right? Otherwise, how do you know the difference between first-year and second-year students? No. Little brat, stop trying to trick me. Answer my question. How did the magic wand come from? Arnok said unhappily. Maureen curled his lips. Arnok was so perfect that he still couldn't figure out his identity. Maureen thought about it and said, I remember Professor Binns talked about the origin of the magic wand in the first class. It was about a man named Wander who encountered a black dragon. He picked up a branch in a hurry, and a piece of unicorn hair happened to fall on the branch. Wander accidentally shouted out the first spell in the history of wizards and defeated the black dragon. This is the origin of the magic wand. Maureen remembered this very clearly, because in the first class, Professor Binns confusedly mistook them for fourth-year freshmen. It took a lot of time for everyone to react, so he was quite impressed. What is that spell? It's not mentioned in the book, and Professor Binns didn't mention it either. Maureen was still thinking about it at the time. The first spell in wizard history should not be a milestone discovery, but a monument should be erected to commemorate it for future generations. However, there is no mention of this in the history of magic, which is quite puzzling. Arnold said slowly, the first spell in wizard history is Avada Kedavra. The air suddenly solidified, and Maureen opened his eyes wide. The first spell is actually Avada Kedavra. Maureen was shocked. This is really too unexpected. Many people know the power of the Avada Kedavra curse. It takes a person's life in an instant, without any possibility of survival. There are no scars on the body, no pain, and life is like a rushing waterfall that suddenly stops flowing and stops abruptly without any signs. So far, it is said that only one person has survived the killing curse, and all wizards know who that person is. Arnok was not surprised by Maureen's reaction, but said meaningfully, isn't it ironic? A killing curse that can end the lives of others and is despised by people is actually the first spell in the history of wizards. But why? When Maureen came back to his senses, he was still a little bit unbelievable. Why is it not recorded in the book? Arnok laughed. The infamous killing curse, which is regarded as a symbol of evil, is the first spell in the history of wizards. This is not a glorious thing. For you students who are not well versed in the world, try not to know it. Maureen forced himself to suppress the shock in his heart. He suddenly felt very uncomfortable. This feeling seemed to indicate that the origin of wizards started from black magic, making the essence of magic a little incredible. It's normal that you can't accept it. Most people can't accept it, but it's the truth. Arnold looked at it lightly. Everything in this world is mutually reinforcing and mutually exclusive. The existence of the killing curse is not shameful. Although it means death, it also opens up a new world for us wizards. You can understand that wizards come from death, but death is not the end. Humans have an ancient magic that can defeat death. Maureen's mouth moved. He knew this because he had read many books about the child who survived, and they all mentioned this. It's love. Maureen said. That's right. Decades ago, the child who survived a catastrophe relied on this magic to survive the death brought by the killing curse. A mother protected her child with her life, and she went to death, but death did not end her life. It continued in her child in another way. Therefore, death, to a certain extent, also represents rebirth. The same is true for the killing curse. It is both the beginning of death and the rebirth of the wizarding magic era. Can you say that it should not exist? The latest novel is first published on the 6th book bar. Arnold's words left Maureen with no excuse to refute. This world is originally made up of all kinds of contradictions. Who can tell the good and evil among them? Nothing is born dark. If your magic is strong enough, you can use the petrification curse and the shattering curse to destroy people. Do you think the petrification curse and the shattering curse are black magic? Arnold asked. Maureen opened his mouth. He didn't know how to answer, because his best spell was the petrification spell, but it was limited to freezing people. A truly powerful petrification spell could completely turn people into stone, and then using the crushing spell would be enough to destroy a person. So, Arnold patted Maureen on the shoulder and smiled. Even if I taught you black magic, if you know what kind of person you want to be, black magic can also be used in the right way. What's important is your own choice. Arnold looked at the sky. The dark clouds in the sky had begun to rumble, and lightning tore through the sky from time to time. The air became stuffy and hot, making people feel a little breathless. I've heard before that there was a professor named Snape in Hogwarts. The wizard was a master of black magic, but he seemed to choose to be a good person. It seemed that he fell in love with a witch. I don't remember it very clearly, but this is very telling. Love is something that makes people odd. Arnold said casually, so the choice of what kind of person you want to be is up to you, not what you learn. Maureen carefully pondered Arnold's words and gradually figured out the key. He found that the old man with a strange temper in front of him saw things very clearly, like a wise man, explaining such a profound topic of death and rebirth in a way that even Maureen, an 11-year-old boy, could understand. By the way, do you know what the 3 unforgivable curses were mainly used for when they were first invented? You would never guess it. Arnold came closer and asked mysteriously. I guess you will tell me. Maureen really couldn't think of it. Ask me, and I'll tell you. Arnold stared at Maureen with a smile like an old naughty boy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89: The Use of the Unforgivable Curses. Maureen looked up at the sky. Dark clouds were rolling over Hogsmeade Village, and raindrops had begun to fall. Should we take shelter? Maureen asked. Ask me. Ask me now. Don't change the subject. Arnok urged. I asked. Should we take shelter? Maureen's shoulders were already wet with raindrops, and soon the heavy rain poured down. I didn't ask you to ask that. Arnok said dissatisfiedly. Arnok, if we don't take shelter, we will get wet. You are so old, and you are getting wet. Maureen opened his eyes in astonishment before he finished speaking. The raindrops fell from the leaves of the camphor tree like a broken dam, but when the raindrops fell on Arnok's side, they jumped away automatically as if they had consciousness, as if there was an invisible umbrella covering Arnok. Maureen was soaked, but Arnok's shoes were not even wet. Wow, I like this magic. Maureen looked at Arnok enviously. After learning this magic, he would not need to bring an umbrella when he went out in the future. Ask quickly. Are you going to suffocate me? Arnok glared at Maureen. Okay. Can you tell me what the 3 unforgivable curses are used for? Maureen could not help but lean towards Arnok to see if he could have a place to shelter from the rain. Arnok then stretched out his hand with satisfaction and waved it over Maureen, and the rain automatically avoided Maureen and fell somewhere else. Maureen took out his wand and said water shadow no trace to his clothes, and the clothes became dry again. The killing curse was used to kill livestock in the past, because animals that died from the killing curse would not have any scars on their bodies, therefore would not be damaged, and their bones would be intact, which could effectively maximize the use of livestock. As for the Cruciatus curse, it is used to tame unruly magical animals. If you want to make animals like fierce dragons obedient, You need to use the Cruciatus curse to teach them a lesson and make them remember. Arnok said. That's really cruel. Maureen said involuntarily. It depends on how you treat it. When wizard magic was just developing in the early days, there were not so many effective spells. The Cruciatus curse was most suitable for taming wild beasts. Arnok said. What about the Imperius curse? Maureen continued to ask. The Imperius curse is the most interesting. Arnok looked very excited. A long time ago, there were not so many strange creatures in the wizarding world, and different magical creatures would not mate with each other to reproduce offspring. But some creative wizards like to do research, but how to make different magical creatures take the initiative to reproduce across species. Arnok showed a weird smile. This is when the Imperius curse comes in handy. For example, the hippogriff, the eagle and the horse will not take the initiative to mate, but with the Imperius curse you can control a male eagle and a female horse to do some interesting and naughty things together, and then use magic to breed the first generation of hippogriffs. Do you understand what I am saying? Ah. Maureen was stunned. Is that so? The unforgivable Imperius curse is actually used to do this. Arnok nodded and laughed out loud. When I knew about this before, I was also very surprised, and had the same reaction as you, but after you accept this fact, you will find it is really fun. Maureen was sweating. He felt that he could no longer look directly at the arrogant spell of Imperius. The more he thought about it, the weirder it felt. 3 unforgivable spells that were despised. One was used to slaughter livestock, one was used to tame wild beasts, and the other was used for cross-species research. It was really incredible. Ha ha ha. Isn't it interesting? So I said, nothing is born dark. The 3 unforgivable curses are just used in the wrong way by people with ulterior motives. There is nothing wrong with their existence itself. Arnok looked at the rain all over the sky, stretched out his hand and grabbed a handful of water bubbles from the rain. He caught a ball of water bubbles in his hand, and he flicked it again, and the bubbles floated away gently. Okay, I said I want to teach you some magic. It's raining today, so let's start with fire magic. Arnok stretched out his other hand and snapped his fingers. A ball of fire appeared at his fingertips. Why do you have to learn fire magic when it rains? Maureen asked puzzledly. He thought that when it rains, you should learn water magic. For example, Arnok's magic that can be waterproof and moisture-proof is very good. If you are fighting someone with magic and you cast a fire spell, how will they respond? Arnok asked. Well, use the water spell. What if your fire is not afraid of water? Arnok asked again. Maureen's eyes lit up. If the fire spell is not afraid of water, it can completely catch the opponent off guard. But Maureen remembered something and said, I know there is a kind of fire that is waterproof. I carry it with me in winter to keep warm. Oh, yes, I can conjure this kind of fire, purple flames. A string of purple flames jumped out of Maureen's wand and floated in the air. Maureen stretched out his hand and gathered it in his palm. The flame gave off a suitable temperature and jumped in his hand, gentle and elegant, without burning his hand. The purple flame is indeed special, but it is not aggressive. You can't expect it to set your opponent on fire. This is not the magic we want to learn. Today we will start with a basic fire spell. The most basic flame is hot and aggressive, and it is suitable for various transformations. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The flame on the fingertips of Arnok's left hand suddenly swelled up, left his fingertips, flew into the air, and burned violently in the rain, emitting a terrible temperature that evaporated all the rain that approached. You can make the flame rush out in different shapes, such as this. Arnok stretched out his finger and casually turned the flame in the air. The flame made a bursting sound, and then formed a burning firebird, spread its wings, made a violent wheezing sound, and flew in the rain. It can also be like this. Arnok turned his finger again, and the firebird split in the middle, forming 2 relatively small fire eagles, one on the left and one on the right, and their figures kept intersecting and colliding with each other in the air, making a strong explosion. It can also be like this. Arnok turned his finger again, and the 2 firebirds suddenly exploded and turned into countless sparks. Those sparks did not disappear, but gradually stretched and were transformed into sharp flaming knives. With a swish, they rushed to the ground. Chi, chi, chi. Those flaming knives sank deeply into the wet ground. The ground that was originally soaked in muddy water was immediately dried by the flaming knives. The rain could not get closer, and the flaming knives continued to burn on the ground. Cool. Maureen exclaimed. What did you see? Arnok waved his hand, and all the flames flew out from the ground, gathered together again, and flew back to his fingertips. Chapter 90 Fire Magic. Maureen looked at the gorgeous fire magic performed by Arnold and he admired it very much. If it were him, he would at most summon a ball of fire and throw it directly at the target. There would be no need for so many tricks. He pondered for a moment and asked tentatively, "This magic combines transfiguration and fire spell, is that right?" Arnok nodded approvingly. "Not bad, you have some vision. The real powerful magic is to transform the things you summon, and combine the two. Of course, you may wonder what's the use of such fancy fire magic, but you can assume that if someone directly destroys the flames you attack with an explosion spell, can you make the broken sparks change into other means of attack?" Maureen said seriously, "Sir, I don't think it's fancy. I think sometimes fancy things can confuse the opponent, don't they?" "Haha, you're very smart." Arnok laughed. "The battle between wizards depends on on-the-spot reactions. Someone may use a freezing spell to deal with your flames, and someone may use a barrier spell to block your flames. If you want your magic to not be restrained, you must learn to adapt your magic to some changes. Start trying now and summon flames in the rain." "I'll try." Maureen shook his wand eagerly and shouted flame. A ball of scorching flame spurted out from the tip of his wand and stayed at the tip of his wand. The heat wave swept over, and it burst and jumped restlessly. He was quite satisfied with his fire spell. Even Hugo, whose wand often went off, was not as good as him in casting fire spells. "You have mastered the fire spell very well, so try playing with the heavy rain." Arnold picked up his cane and hit Maureen's back, driving Maureen out of his rain shelter. "At least let me be mentally prepared." Maureen was driven out, and the rain soaked him again, just like an unlucky dog fished out of the water. The originally hot flame at the tip of his wand made a puffing sound and was directly extinguished by the rain. A light black smoke came out from the tip of his wand and dissipated in the rain. "I've never tried to summon fire in the rain." Maureen shuddered. It was November and the weather was getting colder. It was not a comfortable experience to be drenched by the rain. He reached out and wiped the rain off his face, and shouted again, "Burning flames!" The flames just jumped out of the tip of the magic wand, but before they could grow bigger, they were directly extinguished by the rain. This time, there was not even smoke. Change the spell and use raging flames. This kind of flame is suitable for fighting and transformation. Focus on the flames. Your flames are related to your concentration. You have to think about making the flames resist the rain. Remember, the flames are ordinary flames, but they are also summoned by the magic in your body. It is related to you. Arnok stretched leisurely and put the crutches aside again. "Burning flames? I haven't learned this spell." Maureen tried it, but failed to summon it. He used to use magic flames with raging flames. Burning flames are suitable for cooking, but not for controlling them to transform and fight. Blazing flames are more spiritual and more aggressive. Unlike the fire spell, this spell needs to be rotated 91 degrees counterclockwise and then cast quickly. Arnok said. "Rotate 91 degrees counterclockwise and cast quickly." Maureen mastered the technique and swung it. A stream of red flame spurted out from his wand, but was extinguished by the rain again. He tried to focus on his wand, but unfortunately, after trying more than 10 times, the flame could not resist the impact of the rain. The longest time it stayed in the rain was 2 seconds, which was his limit. Arnok, do you really think this is a good idea?" Maureen asked, shivering slightly, "trying this magic in the rain?" "Oh, yes, I forgot that you are still a little kid, and your body is not strong enough." Arnok dug out of his pocket for a long time, and finally took out a wine flask and threw it to Maureen. "Drink it, it will warm you up." "But we can't drink before we reach the age." Maureen's hair was tightly stuck to his forehead. He lifted his hair to the side, shook his head to shake off the rain, and said hesitantly, "Are you so obedient? Then why did you sneak out of school?" Arnok asked unhappily. Maureen pretended to blush. "This is a dragon flame cold repellent. I found a fire dragon to spit fire for me. How many people want to drink it but can't? And you are picky," Arnok said. Maureen was a little surprised after hearing what Arnold said. Normally, they used ordinary flames to brew potions in potion class. He also heard from Professor Francis that the flames of some animals would make potions more powerful. Among these magical animals, the flames of phoenixes and dragons were undoubtedly the best. But ordinary wizards would never get a rare phoenix, let alone control the bad-tempered dragons. When those dragons got angry, A few simple stun spells might not be enough to subdue them. Maureen remembered the 3 unforgivable curses that Arnold had just mentioned. He thought that Arnold must have used the Imperious Curse to control a dragon, making it squat under the crucible like a good baby. Then Arnold knocked the dragon's head with his cane, and the dragon spit fire. He knocked it again, and the dragon closed its mouth obediently and blinked innocently. Although this scene was very strange to think about, Maureen reminded himself that this was very likely. Thinking this way, he became more curious about Arnok's identity. After all, not everyone has the ability to control a fire dragon to boil the potion. Maureen uncorked the bottle and took a sip. Dragon Flame Cold Repellent was not alcohol, but a very strange potion. It was hot and spread along the throat to the stomach as soon as it entered his mouth. He felt that the blood in his body was boiling, as if it was about to burst into flames. His skin became hot and his hair even stood up. Arnok, why do you feel so uncomfortable? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen was surprised to find that there seemed to be an uncontrollable breath in his body that was about to burst out. The rain on his body was actually evaporated and became hot. The originally wet clothes became dry and even seemed to be on fire. Arnok was startled. How much did you drink? Not much, just 1 sip. Who told you to drink a sip? I only let you drink a drop. Arnok showed a distressed look. He seemed to care less about Maureen's condition and more about his potion. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Help me, I feel like I'm going to smoke. Oh no, it's already smoking. The rain on Maureen's body evaporated into smoke, and the whole person seemed to be roasted in a pot, with smoke everywhere, and even mist rising from his hair. What should I do? He felt that he couldn't bear it anymore, and waved his wand hard. This time, before he could shout out the spell, a terrifying and hot flame had already gushed out from the tip of his wand. The bright red flame was violent and swept through the air violently, forming a huge fire dragon, roaring in the rain, and then turned around, and the hot fire dragon crashed into the big tree behind him. Boom! The huge camphor tree, which was soaked by the rain, suddenly ignited under the attack of the fire dragon. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a fire tree with raging flames. The leaves were crackling and burning, making sharp whirring sounds. The rain from the sky couldn't even put out the flames on it. Oh, this is not good. Maureen looked at the camphor tree in a daze. He was completely unprepared for such a change. Chapter 91, The Fire Spell That Is Not Afraid of Water. Oh no, take it easy. This is a century-old camphor tree in Hogsmeade Village, with a long history. Arnok stood up quickly. This time he no longer dealt with the flames with his bare hands. Instead, he took out a brown wand from his pocket, pointed it at the camphor tree, and waved it. All the out-of-control flames on the camphor tree were drawn into his wand and gradually disappeared. The camphor tree had been burned to only dead branches. The violent flames were very overbearing, and the temperature emitted made Maureen feel a little scared. He didn't understand how he could cast such a terrible flame. Did I succeed? Maureen asked uncertainly. After he cast these flames, the violent aura on his body had disappeared. Although the flames just now were a little out of control, at least they resisted the rain, but it was a pity for the camphor tree. Successful as, the camphor tree is burned. Arnok ran to the camphor tree, which had no leaves, and gently poked the trunk with his wand. The bark was easily poked off by the wand. It's burned through, but hopefully it can still be saved. Arnok squatted down and tapped the ground with his wand. Not long after, a half-dead tree root emerged from the ground. It was only the size of a thumb, and it was still smoking slightly. It looked scorching hot. Is my flame that powerful? Maureen asked awkwardly. Your unfortunate flame made it burn from the inside out. Even the tree roots in this oil were not spared. Fortunately, this small piece is left. Arnok took out a slender purple glass bottle from his pocket with great effort. The neck of the glass bottle was more than 30 centimeters long. I really don't know what else is in Arnok's small pocket. Maureen couldn't help wondering when he would try to learn the infinite extension spell and use it on his own pocket. Arnok poured a few drops of purple potion from the slender glass bottle and dripped them on the half-dead, blackened tree root. The root cracked and a little green sprout emerged. Then it began to grow roots again and sank into the soil. A little bit of new branches began to drill out from the charred tree ash, and the leaves gradually stretched out. In less than 10 seconds, a large camphor tree had grown into shape. Fortunately, it is quite tenacious and survived. Arnok put the glass bottle into his pocket, put away his wand, and sat back in his chair. Maureen looked at Arnok's pocket with interest and asked, "What kind of potion is this? How can it bring a tree back to life?" He learned in the herbology class that some spells can make withered plants regenerate, but most of the effects are limited, especially the camphor tree that was burned by Maureen to the point of being unrecognizable. According to the usual practice, it was a kind of death sentence. No potion or spell could make it grow again, but Arnok successfully made a section of the root grow back, which was really extraordinary. This is a precious herb resurrection potion, brewed with the flames of the phoenix reborn from the ashes. You should know that the phoenix is harder to control than a fire dragon. I borrowed it from Deng. Never mind, just continue, don't waste my potion. Arnok felt sorry for his potion. Maureen looked apologetic. The temperature of his whole body had dropped. The rain would no longer evaporate, and his clothes became wet again. This time, he shook his wand lightly, and the flames jumped out again, but then with a puff, the flames were extinguished by the rain again. "How about you give me another drop?" Maureen said with hope. Arnok hit Maureen with his cane. "If you don't want to give it, then don't give it. Hitting people hurts feelings." Maureen muttered, but the cane didn't hurt, so he didn't care. Maureen tried no less than 50 times. Every time the flame appeared, it was extinguished by the rain before it had time to grow into a big fireball. After about an hour, the small flame he summoned could finally survive the rain. Although the flame was only the size of a fingernail, like a dim candle flame, swaying and trembling in the wind and rain, and could be blown out at any time, he was still quite satisfied with the fire spell he practiced. At least he could summon a fire that was not afraid of water. Mr. Arnold, I have succeeded. Maureen turned around and found Arnold snoring in the chair, sleeping out of boredom. Maureen woke Arnold up, and Arnold yawned and asked sleepily, "Did it succeed?" "A little bit." Maureen showed Arnold the small flame on the wand, and he blushed a little. Compared with Arnold's free-spirited firebird, his small flame seemed too shabby. Arnok stretched lazily, looked at the small flame on Maureen's wand, and nodded slightly. "Not bad. I thought I would have to sleep until the evening to succeed. It's beyond my expectation. Practice more, so that your fire magic will not suffer in the future when you fight with others." Maureen shook his wand, and the flame rose slightly, then weakened. Then he asked, "Mr. Arnok, why do you always talk about fighting with others? In this era, the purpose of learning magic should not be to fight, right? In school, the magic they learned was mostly some transfiguration and spells that were useful in life, such as the folding spell, the levitation spell, turning a pen into a spoon for emergency use, etc. Except for the defense against the dark arts class that taught everyone how to deal with dark magic, other classes rarely involved fighting. Arnok said nonchalantly, "Be prepared. Who knows if there are undercurrents beneath the surface of peace? I teach you magic because I like you. Come to my place every week to study. I have nothing to do, so I'll just use this as a way to kill time. What if I have something to do on the weekend? You know, I have some homework to do at school," Maureen said. Arnok reached into his pocket for a long time and took out 2 palm-sized pieces of parchment. The parchment looked very smooth. He handed one of the pieces to Maureen and said, "If you come, use this to notify me. You write on the parchment and I can see it here." Arnok took out a pen and drew a grimace on his parchment. Then the parchment in Maureen's hand suddenly shook, which scared Maureen. He saw a grimace on his parchment. The latest novels are first published on 69shushu.com. Not bad. I haven't used this kind of thing for a long time, and it still works. Arnok put away the pen with satisfaction. What if the parchment is full? Maureen searched in his pocket. He also brought a pen. He also tried to write his name on the parchment. The parchment on Arnok's side also shook violently, reminding that someone had sent a letter. Then the same words appeared on Arnok's parchment. After writing, you can scratch it with a magic wand, and the handwriting will automatically disappear. Arnok explained. Maureen put away the parchment and continued, "Then Mr. Arnok, can you tell me now where Circle Duggan's home is?" Arnok stood up, stretched his muscles, blinked his clear blue eyes playfully, and said, "I've told you, it's the Shrieking Shack outside Hogsmeade Village. But you said it wasn't there last time." Maureen looked puzzled. "Did I say that? I just told you not to trust strangers." Arnok yawned, then said, "The only remaining descendant of Circle Duggan died 50 or 60 years ago, and that's an empty house. If you want to explore a haunted house or something, go by yourself. I'm leaving." Then what's wrong with my eyes? Swish. The air made a bang, and Arnak disappeared on the spot. Who said not to operate in Hogsmeade Village last time? Maureen couldn't help muttering. Chapter 92 The Shrieking Shack. There's a lonely house on the hill outside Hogsmeade. It is said that this house is the most haunted place in the UK. Even the natives of Hogsmeade dare not approach it. After the rain stopped, Maureen politely asked a small-eyed wizard in a snakeskin coat on the street about the location of the Shrieking Shack. Leave Hogsmeade along the street. There is a small slope. Climb up and you will see a house. Just look at it from a distance. Don't get close. There are terrible things living in it. The small-eyed wizard warned. What terrible things? Maureen asked. Ghosts, vampires, werewolves, whatever you can think of, there are inside. The small-eyed wizard said very seriously. Maureen didn't know whether he should believe it or not. After thanking him, he walked out along the street of the village. Because it had just rained heavily, there were no curious students here, so Maureen didn't meet anyone else along the way. On the hill in the distance stood an old, dilapidated house with a hole in the corner of the eaves. Green vines covered the walls of the Shrieking Shack. All the doors and windows were nailed shut. The weeds around the house were half a person's height. Maureen looked around and found no one. He crouched down and crawled into the half-person high grass. He stepped deep and shallow in the muddy grass and approached the Shrieking Shack with great effort. It was quiet all around. The wind blew and made a whistling sound. Water drops dripped from the eaves, which was very clear on this quiet hill. Maureen was very courageous. He was not afraid of any vengeful spirits or werewolves. Spirits were generally not aggressive. Werewolves could only transform when the moon was full. As for vampires, he just stopped by the exotic vegetable store in Hogsmeade to buy garlic. I hope the garlic works. Maureen found the front door of the Shrieking Shack, knocked on it with his wand, and shouted "Alato open," but the door seemed to be sealed by some spell and could not be opened. He turned around again and saw a wooden board that was about to fall down. The board was originally used to seal the window, and the glass of the window had been broken long ago. He desperately pulled off the board and climbed in through the small window. He stepped on the creaking floor. The floor was soaked by rain, and the dust was soaked into mud by rain. The floor of the entire first floor was damp. Luminescent flash. The tip of Maureen's wand lit up, slightly dispelling a little darkness. The ceiling upstairs was still dripping, as if it was because of a leak. The sound was very creepy in the empty house. The place he crawled into was a bedroom. There was a broken bed in the bedroom. The bedboard had long gone, leaving only a wooden frame. Next to it was a crooked wardrobe. The wardrobe originally had 4 legs, but it seemed that one leg was bitten off by a mouse. It leaned against the wall, and one of the doors was open. Maureen walked over carefully. He had to be careful not to step on empty space, because many places on the floor looked fragile and seemed to break if stepped on. If this is Sir Cadogan's home, maybe his portrait should be somewhere around here. Maureen walked towards the wardrobe leaning against the wall and gently opened the other door of the wardrobe. Swish. Accompanied by a few sharp chirps, more than a dozen small shadows flapped their wings and crawled out of the wardrobe and rushed towards Maureen. These little guys were less than the size of a hand, covered with thick black hair, revealing 2 rows of sharp teeth, and their little fingers had sharp claws. Unlucky, it's the fox demons. Maureen quickly threw out a white light and shouted "Petrify all." The 2 fox demons flying in the front fell to the ground with a thud, making a hard stick sound. But there were still a dozen fox demons behind them rushing over one after another. The flames are raging. Maureen's magic wand sprayed out more a ball of fire, and the fire emitted a scorching flame in front. The fox demons screamed and scattered. Without rain, my flames are still very good. Maureen controlled the ball of fire with satisfaction and drove the fox demons out. These fox demons looked like a little monkey with 2 wings on their backs. They liked to hide in dark and damp corners and were obviously afraid of things like fire. He checked the closet and found a nest of little fox demons in the closet. They had no hair on their bodies, were chubby, and could not fly. They were crawling around in the closet in panic. You are lucky. Maureen did not intend to burn the foxes to death. Although these things are pests, he is not a pest control specialist. He checked the whole house and did not find any picture frames or anything like that. He walked out of the bedroom and came to the main hall. A musty smell filled the main hall. The floor was still covered with a carpet that was many years old. The carpet had been bitten by termites and was riddled with holes. The pattern on it could not be distinguished. Several chairs and tables with missing arms and legs were tilted. The wall was covered with paper that was about to rot. There were some strange claw marks on the wall, which looked like marks left by werewolves. Maureen even saw many marks of beasts biting on the back of the chair. He checked the living room on the first floor and did not see anything unusual. Instead, he saw a secret passage under the carpet. This should be the secret passage on the Skull Live Point map that James mentioned, right? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Maureen pulled open the wooden board of the hole and looked inside. A rotten and musty smell came, choking him. He covered the board again. This passage was probably under the Whomping Willow leading to Hogwarts. Maureen didn't need to go back to school through this passage. He stepped on the collapsing stairs to the second floor. The door on the second floor was severely deformed, as if it had been smashed by something. The whole room looked messy. There was a four-legged curtain bed like the one in Maureen's school, but it had collapsed. No, is this really Sir Cadogan's home? Maureen was puzzled. He walked down the stairs and sighed. Maybe Sir Cadogan really didn't leave the last painting, and his trip was in vain. Maureen searched the whole house again unwillingly, but still didn't see any picture frames. When he was about to leave here along the original route, a slight creaking sound suddenly sounded in the house, which seemed to come from under the stairs. The sound came so abruptly that Maureen's nerves immediately tense up. When he came in just now, there was no other sound in the room except the creaking of the wooden boards and the sound of water leaking. Then there seemed to be slight footsteps coming from under the stairs, and the footsteps creaked on the floor. It was the sound of human footsteps. Who? Maureen raised his wand vigilantly and pointed at the dark place of the stairs. He couldn't help but think of werewolves, ghosts, and vampires. He first ruled out werewolves, and he was not afraid of ghosts, so the only thing left was vampires. But aren't vampires an animal? Maureen held the garlic in one hand, and the wand in the other was ready to attack at any time. It's me. A person slowly walked out from the dark place of the stairs. With the help of the dim light of the wand, Maureen opened his eyes wide in surprise and saw the person in front of him clearly. Chapter 93 The Most Feared Thing. Professor Charles, why are you here? Maureen looked at the gentle and smiling Professor Charles in front of him in doubt and did not react for a long time. The person in front of him turned out to be Professor Charles, the teacher of Maureen's Muggle Studies class. Meeting the professor here was scarier to Maureen than meeting a werewolf or a ghost. Professor, what are you doing here? Maureen felt a headache. He had violated the school rules and sneaked out. He was caught by the professor here. It was estimated that his fate would be miserable, especially since he had learned Muggle studies poorly. He was not the professor's favorite student. I'm afraid he would be put in confinement for a month and a half. But he was puzzled in his heart. Why did Professor Charles suddenly appear here? He came here to find Sir Cadogan, so where was Professor Charles? Professor Charles still looked at Maureen with a smile on his face. Maureen, freshmen should not sneak out of the campus. I will tell your dean about this when I go back. You will be severely punished. Professor Charles was actually smiling while teaching Maureen a lesson. This smile was particularly eerie under the light of Maureen's wand. There were gusts of cool breeze blowing around, which made Maureen shiver involuntarily. Professor, Maureen's mind was working quickly, trying to find a suitable excuse, but for a moment his mind seemed to be stuck and he couldn't find any excuse at all. On the contrary, he recalled the scene of meeting Professor Charles in the corridor on the 7th floor during the Quidditch match last week. At that time, Maureen was looking for clues in the corridor on the 7th floor, but Professor Charles made a speech to the painting on the wall in the corridor on the 7th floor. This incident made Maureen feel a little weird at the time. Now Professor Charles suddenly appeared in this place again. Could it be that Professor Charles was really related to the disappearance of Sir Cadogan? Maureen's heart skipped a beat. Thinking of what happened recently, he became more and more afraid. If Professor Charles found out that he was investigating this matter, wouldn't he? Yes, you are very smart. Smart people can't survive. Professor Charles raised his wand with a smile and pointed it at Maureen. Maureen's heart was in his throat. Professor Charles was really going to attack him. He was just a freshman and hadn't learned much magic, but the one he faced was a real adult wizard and an experienced professor. He had almost no chance of winning. But Maureen didn't know where he got the courage from, so he just took the initiative. Petrification. A dazzling white light shot out and hit Professor Charles' chest. Professor Charles couldn't dodge in time and fell backwards, hitting the stairs and knocking a hole in the stairs. You knocked him down so fast. Maureen was a little stunned. No matter how skilled he was in the petrification spell, it was impossible for him to really hit Professor Charles. In his opinion, Professor Charles would definitely be able to catch him before he cast the petrification spell. Professor Charles slowly climbed up from the broken wooden planks of the stairs, still looking at Maureen with a smile, and at this time, he had a book on Muggle studies in his hand. "Morgan, you have to write a 20-inch paper on the difference between Muggle computers and TVs, and hand it in tomorrow, or I will kill you." "Huh?" Maureen looked at Professor Charles in astonishment. Why did Professor Charles say such a strange thing at this juncture? Should he stand up and cast a full-body binding spell on himself? "No, you are not Professor Charles." Maureen suddenly realized that it was impossible for Professor Charles to be knocked down so easily by him, and the possibility of recognizing him here was also very small, not to mention taking out the Muggle studies paper that he feared the most. "You are a boggart." Grandpa said that boggart would become the most feared thing in people's hearts. "What spell should be used?" "Oh, right, funny." Maureen pointed his wand at Professor Charles and flicked it gently. With a puff, Professor Charles in front of him turned into smoke and disappeared. "Huh?" Maureen breathed a sigh of relief, but also secretly sweated. Professor Charles inexplicably walked out from behind the dark stairs just now, which really scared him. Fortunately, he knew about boggart. He had hidden one in his attic before, and it was Alton who cleaned it up personally. This place is so dark and no one has lived in it for decades. It can still be called a haunted house. I'm afraid it has something to do with boggart. Maureen thought to himself, if a curious wizard came here to find out what was going on and met a boggart, the boggart would become the most feared thing in people's hearts. People who came in would be so scared when they saw the vampires they feared the most that they would run away in panic. In this way, the rumors would probably spread more and more. Then Maureen frowned again. It was indeed a headache for boggart to take out the paper of Muggle studies, but he was a little surprised to see Professor Charles appear. What he feared the most was Professor Charles. "This is really weird. Professor Charles is a very good person," Maureen said pertinently. But in fact, he was really worried about this matter. Since he saw Professor Charles in the corridor on the 7th floor last time, he felt something was wrong. There was a reason why Maureen went to the corridor on the 7th floor when everyone was watching the Quidditch game. Why did Professor Charles appear in that place? Maureen was most afraid that when the matter was investigated to the end, he would find that the mastermind behind it was a teacher, and then he would have no way to deal with it. The latest novels are first published on the 6th floor of the book bar. I hope it's not him, or I won't be so lucky next time. Maureen thought to himself. The boggart just now turned into Professor Charles, but the boggart can't cast magic, and the real Professor Charles is a very experienced wizard. He can just wave his wand and he will be in trouble. He steadied his breath and was about to leave the screaming shack when suddenly a low and light-blowing sound came from behind the stairs where the boggart just came out, which seemed very strange in the dark. Is there another boggart? Maureen thought hesitantly. He walked over carefully. The light of the magic wand dispelled the darkness under the stairs. Then he was surprised to find that there was a secret door behind the stairs that was opened. The boggart seemed to have come out from there just now. And the blowing sound Maureen heard was actually coming from this secret door. What's going on? Are there two secret passages in this room? Maureen turned his head and looked at the wooden door covered by the carpet on the other side of the hall. That should be the secret passage leading to the school. He looked at the secret door under the stairs again. Where does this one lead to? Should I go down and see what's going on? Maureen pondered for a moment. Anyway, since he was already here, there was nothing to be afraid of. If a boggart dared to live in it, why shouldn't he be afraid to go? Thinking of this, he bent down and walked towards the secret door behind the stairs. But at this moment, his feet suddenly stepped on empty air, and the old wooden planks broke apart. With a crash, Maureen fell down and hit the ground heavily. The disguise hat was knocked off, and the wand in his hand also fell out. The light of the wand disappeared, and the surroundings fell into darkness. Just as he was grinning, the creepy blowing sound actually rang not far from his ear. Chapter 94 The Storm is Coming. The blowing sound was right next to Maureen, and it was particularly clear in the darkness, as if something terrible was whispering in his ear, which gave him goosebumps. What the hell? Maureen took a breath and fumbled around for his wand. If he had the wand in his hand, he wouldn't be afraid of anything, but if the wand slipped out of his hand, he would be like a chicken. He was not an old wizard like Arnold who could cast magic with his bare hands. Luminescent flash. Maureen shouted hurriedly, hoping to make his wand light up, but it didn't. The wand rolled away in the darkness. In a hurry, he shouted, "Flames are raging again, Chi." Maureen was stunned for a moment, and this time a small flame actually lit up from his index finger. His finger was like a candle, and the weak candlelight slightly illuminated the surroundings. Can I also control fire with my bare hands? Maureen sat up. Below him was a pair of rotten and crushed broken wooden boards, which gave off an unpleasant smell of decay, which was pungent and unpleasant, but he didn't care. He focused on the flame on his index finger, and was quite interested. He even forgot about the strange blowing sound around him. Arnold was right. The power of magic cast by bare hands was indeed not as powerful as that of a wand. When he cast magic with a wand, he could produce a ball of fierce flames, but when he cast magic with bare hands, the magic didn't seem to be very smooth. He could only produce a pitiful little flame that could be extinguished at any time. When the blowing sound sounded again, Maureen finally reacted. He quickly looked around and found his wand among the broken wooden boards with the help of the weak flame. He extinguished the flame on his fingertips and made the wand emit fluorescent light. The fluorescent light of the wand was much stronger than the flame. He looked around and found that he seemed to be in the basement of the Shrieking Shack. The basement seemed to have not been opened for many years. It was damp and dark. It had just rained and seemed to be leaking a little. The floor was very damp. There were all kinds of messy and damaged furniture piled up everywhere, in all directions. Some furniture was covered with rags, but the rags were covered with thick dust. Maureen even saw a skeleton with a dog's head and a snake's body, strung together by strings. He didn't know whether it was real bones or decorations. He listened carefully, and this time he heard the blowing sound coming from somewhere, just under a tattered chair covered by rags next to him. He looked at the rags vigilantly, and at this time the blowing sound suddenly disappeared. Transfiguration. Maureen cast a dissiparation charm and moved the rags away. The rags brought up a cloud of dust, which made him choke. Then he was surprised to see a picture frame covered with thick dust and dirt. No way. Merlin pulled out a huge painting with great effort, waved his wand, whispered, "Clean it up," and the dust on the canvas was swept away. Treacherous traitor. Why cover my mouth? Do you think you can do your dirty work by keeping me silent? I tell you, the brave knight will not stop burning his blood. Sir Cadogan waved his fist and shouted at the painting. My God, you are really here. Merlin was overjoyed. He had been looking for this guy in the Screaming Shack for a long time, but he didn't expect that this guy was forgotten in the basement. Sir Cadogan saw Merlin and put away his fist. Oh, it's you. My loyal comrade, are you here to save me? Merlin cleaned up all the dust around Sir Cadogan's frame. Sir Cadogan's frame had the same background as the one of Hogwarts School, but there was a horse missing. His warhorse, who liked to act up, was wandering on the wall of Hogwarts School and obviously did not follow. Sir Cadogan was blowing just now because he wanted to blow away the dust on the portrait. The dust covered him and made him unable to speak. That dirty and shameless villain took my sword and destroyed my territory while I was not paying attention. Sir Cadogan picked up a wooden sword from the ground angrily. He wore a hat made of grass leaves on his head, which looked out of place. His original sword and helmet were destroyed in the original painting. Maureen saw the hilt and half of the helmet when he picked up the fragments of that painting last time. Maureen couldn't wait to ask, "Who is that person?" "You must have seen him, right? This is the purpose of his coming to Sir Cadogan. If Sir Cadogan hadn't seen that person, it would be impossible for him to be destroyed by someone in a daze." "Yes, I saw it." Sir Cadogan swung the wooden sword in his hand, but the swing was too large and the straw hat on his head was accidentally knocked off. He quickly picked it up and put it on again, and continued angrily, "The shameless man who used despicable means to destroy a classic painting with his bloody hands. I already know who he is." The dark clouds in the sky gathered together again, and the wind and rain roared down from the clouds, washing the entire Hogsmeade village. Lightning tore through the dark clouds, as if the gloomy sky opened its eyes and looked coldly at the earth above the village. "It looks like this rain has just started." Arnok stood on the balcony of the cottage, looking at the people rushing by on the street in the distance, and muttered to himself. Some wizards on the street hurried by with umbrellas, while wizards without umbrellas stretched out their wands to prop up a transparent awning over their heads. Some wizards simply used their wands to create a huge bubble to cover their entire bodies and block the attack of wind and rain. The wizards who could apparate had already gone home. The students who could not apparel it and did not know how to protect themselves from the rain were looking around outside the store, anxious, wondering how to get back to school. Yes, it's just the beginning. The old woman stood next to Arnok, with a crystal ball floating in her left hand. The transparent crystal ball was surrounded by smoke, slowly flowing, like clouds in the sky, with lightning flashing through the smoke. Did you see anything? Arnok turned his head and looked at the old woman. The clear blue eyes lacked the playfulness of an old naughty boy, but became more profound, making people unpredictable. The old woman shook her head. I can't see nothing. I can see the end of the battle 21 years ago, but I can't see the future of this matter. Because of this boy. Yes, because of this boy. The old woman nodded. Her green eyes were like the unfathomable stars, as hazy as the smoke in the crystal ball. It's really weird, isn't it? Arnold showed a meaningful smile. Some people are born to defeat the Dark Lord and are called saviors. Their future can be seen by you, but some are born to exist for unknown reasons, and no one can predict their future. Can't you help him? Asked the old woman. The child born at the end of July had the guidance of Dumbledore. Although his road was bumpy, he finally succeeded in defeating Voldemort. But what about this child? Dumbledore is not here. Arnold shook his head. I'm already helping him. You're just teaching him basic magic. The old woman wanted to say something. That's enough. The latest novels are first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. Arnold stretched and interrupted the old woman. You know we can't interfere, just like we don't interfere in Dumbledore's affairs. We can only be a bystander, not a participant, understand? Besides, isn't there a fortune teller in the school? Cassandra's great-great-grandson. The old woman showed a trace of disdain on her face. Is her divination skill up to par? She predicted the boy who lived. Oh. Shut up, old man. The old woman said unhappily. How dare you mention this? Arnold giggled like an old child. I know you saw this ending in your precious crystal ball before her. Yes, I saw the boy who lived a long time ago, but I don't like to tell everyone what I saw. The old woman snorted, and said worriedly, it's just that I can't see this child named Maureen, which makes me very worried. I like him quite a lot. Although he looks a bit silly, he is very smart. The fire magic he cast today got out of control, Arnag said thoughtfully. The out-of-control fire was quite powerful. I had to use the magic wand to extinguish those terrible flames. Arnok did not use the magic wand when teaching Maureen magic. He only took out his magic wand for the first time when he extinguished the fire. His magic got out of control? How did it get out of control? The old woman was surprised. He drank a sip of the potion I brewed with a fire dragon. Haha. One sip. The old woman shouted, looking very angry. Can you drink a sip of that thing? Old man, what are you doing? He is not on fire, right? No, he is very special. I just forgot to tell him. Arnok blinked his eyes and regained his former playfulness. The clear eyes made him look not like an old man, but full of energy. Then Arnold changed the subject and said, have you seen the signs of the Dark Awakening? Yes, I told you 2 months ago. The source of time is messed up, and it's also there. But I can't see the mastermind behind the whole thing. I think it must be because of this child being involved. He interfered with what I should have seen, and the truth I could see was limited. The old woman said seriously. So you don't want to see him, afraid that you will see less, right? Arnold laughed again. The old woman glared at him and said, yes, you have contacted him, so you sleep on the sofa at night, otherwise you might disturb me. Arnold's smile froze, and then his beard stood up in anger. Too much? Why don't you sleep on the sofa? I will suffer from insomnia. The old woman ignored Arnold and continued, I saw some students with amnesia. They were cast with a very strange and evil magic. I thought for a long time that the person who could cast that magic might be that person. Who? Voldemort? Grindelwald? None of them. It's someone else, a very low-key person who shouldn't appear. The old woman turned the crystal ball, and the hazy smoke in the crystal ball slowly coiled and rolled, and finally formed a castle standing on the edge of a towering cliff. It's in Hogwarts. Chapter 95 The Man Who Destroyed the Painting. Are you sure it's this person? Maureen's heart was in turmoil. The thing he feared the most had happened. Yes, it's that person, the hypocritical college teacher. Sir Cadogan said angrily, waving his wooden sword, Professor Charles. But he's a teacher, isn't he? Maureen said uncertainly, teachers won't do anything to the school's paintings. Maureen thought of what happened in the corridor on the 7th floor that day. and when he thought of his encounter with the bog art just now, he suddenly felt a little dry in the mouth. Was Professor Charles really the mastermind behind this incident? If it was Professor Charles, what was his purpose in doing these things? I see it clearly. Brave comrade. Sir Cadogan stuck the wooden sword into the ground, leaned his hand on the hilt, and said, "That day I rode my warhorse to open up the territory." Maureen understood this sentence as Sir Cadogan going out to find the pony who ran away from home. "When I came back, I found the painting was already in the broom room. Professor Charles just swung his butcher knife at me. The territory I worked so hard for was reduced to ashes. I was forced to flee to this dark place." Sir Cadogan was indignant. "This place is full of rotten memories. The shameless mud almost suffocated me. I couldn't even make a sound for help. But you can blow." "Yes, as long as I have a breath left, I will blow away the filth in the world and let the truth come to the world," Sir Cadogan said excitedly. He was unstable, and the wooden sword he was leaning on broke with a click. The whole person accidentally fell to the ground in embarrassment. "Did you see with your own eyes that the man was Professor Charles? Or is there something different? For example, you only look at his face, but his words and deeds are not the same?" Maureen asked. This is very important, because Maureen knows that the Polyjuice Potion can also impersonate another person. The Polyjuice Potion can perfectly impersonate in all aspects, but some people's movements, habits and temperament cannot be impersonated. "I can't explain it, I don't know him." Sir Cadogan got up from the ground, picked up the broken wooden sword, and smeared his saliva on the broken part of the wooden sword with his finger. The wooden sword was reconnected. Maureen wanted to ask Sir Cadogan's saliva whether it was adhesive or something else. How could it be so magical? But he thought that the wooden sword and Sir Cadogan were both things in the painting, and things in the painting could not be viewed according to common sense, so he resisted asking. Sir Cadogan waved the wooden sword again and frowned. "But now that you say so, I really feel that there is something wrong with him, as if there is some familiar smell on him. It seems to be the smell of blood." "Yes, blood." "The smell of blood? What is that?" Maureen asked in surprise. "He has blood on his hands? Did he kill someone?" "It's not the blood you understand, it's the blood of all the people in the painting. The supreme, noble and respected blood flowing in our people in the painting," said Sir Cadogan. "Oh." Maureen understood. "You mean the paint ink used for painting. Please don't use such vulgar language to describe our blood," Sir Cadogan said seriously. "We don't call it paint ink, we call it blood. My brave comrade. If I can't eliminate the treacherous villains, I would rather burn my blood into smoke and die with the enemy." "But how could Professor Charles have paint ink on him? I mean, the smell of blood?" Maureen asked puzzledly. Sir Cadogan became very serious. "Maybe he has also attacked other compatriots in the castle. I am not the first. This demon with noble blood on his hands." Maureen couldn't figure it out. He shone his wand and picked up his disguise hat from the ground. "Brave comrade, take me back to the battlefield." Sir Cadogan waved his wooden sword. "I want to go back and confront that treacherous man head-on. Even if I die, I will die gloriously." "No." Maureen shook his head. "No one will believe you, after all, you." Maureen wanted to say that Sir Cadogan was crazy, but he felt it was impolite, so he changed his words and said, "Many people don't understand your concept of fighting on the battlefield, right? They won't believe you, not to mention that you are going to testify against a professor. Do you think the principal will believe you?" Sir Cadogan challenged students in the castle all day long, saying their own strange words. Maureen estimated that even Sir Cadogan's descendants didn't want to listen to his shouting and yelling, so he was thrown here. Sir Cadogan's words lacked persuasiveness. Maureen would not foolishly run to the principal's office with a painting and say that Professor Charles was carrying out a conspiracy. Especially since he didn't know what Professor Charles was doing. "Are we just going to let the treacherous man get away with it?" Sir Cadogan said unwillingly. "I don't know, but you can't testify against him anyway. It would be much easier if you behaved normally. At least not now. Let me think about it." Maureen picked up Sir Cadogan with great effort. It was not easy because Sir Cadogan's painting was very big, at least half the size of him. He dragged Sir Cadogan's painting out of the basement. The stairs to the top were shaky, and he had to be very careful not to slip and fall again. "Your painting frame is too big. I'll see if I can use the shrinking spell to put you in my pocket." "I haven't learned the shrinking spell yet," Maureen said hesitantly in the hall of the shed, holding his wand. "Cast your magic with confidence. I never doubt my comrades," Sir Cadogan said righteously. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Then I'd better practice first. Maureen pulled the broken leg of a chair next to him, tapped it with his wand, and whispered, "Shrink quickly." Bang! The broken leg of the chair suddenly expanded and became as big as a table. Oh, why did it get bigger? Sorry, I only remember the spell, not the action of waving the wand. How many degrees to rotate, shake or? Maureen was thinking, and the piece of wood he had enlarged suddenly shattered and turned into a pile of sawdust. Sir Cadogan sucked in a breath of cold air and nervously changed his words. "My dear comrade, although I will not doubt you, how about we reconsider other ways? It doesn't matter, I learn spells very quickly, but I always fail the first time. If only I had my book, it would definitely talk about the wand movements." Maureen suddenly remembered the parchment. "Oh, Mr. Arnott. Fortunately, I brought a pen." He took out the folded parchment and pen from his pocket and wrote on the paper, "Mr. Arnott, what is the wand movement for the shrinking spell?" Maureen didn't know whether Arnott would see it. He just wanted to give it a try, hoping that Arnott would just find the message he sent. He was lucky. 2 minutes later, the parchment kept jumping. He grabbed the parchment and it stopped jumping. A line of words appeared on the parchment: rotate clockwise 271 degrees, and shake again. A moving encyclopedia. Great. Maureen picked up the wand again. This time, he only tried twice to successfully shrink the broken leg of the chair to the size of a pin. The reason why he learned spells faster than others was because he was more proficient in controlling the wand than many people, and the movements of the wand were surprisingly accurate. "Okay, Sir Cadogan, I have mastered the shrinking spell," Maureen said confidently. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Doubt. Maureen was running wildly in the heavy rain, with a shrunken Sir Cadogan in his pocket, and ran quickly to the farm, came to the abandoned hut, and took the minecart back to school. On the minecart, he took out his wand to wipe off the rain on his body. "After you go back, you stay in my cabinet, don't talk, and don't run around," Maureen said to Sir Cadogan, who was only the size of a palm. "Do you want to charge into the battle alone? I am not that kind of person to leave me alone to live a miserable life," Sir Cadogan said very righteously. "You only have one life now. If you run around and meet Professor Charles, it will be over," Maureen warned. Sir Cadogan found that what Maureen said was right, and he said, "Can my cavalry be reunited with me? I want to prepare for battle with it, practice tactics, and prepare for the future. It went out to scout the enemy last time, and couldn't come to my side from other paintings." Honestly. The minecart had stopped, and Maureen cast a deceleration spell on himself. He climbed down the minecart and continued, "I think your cavalry prefers wandering. The grass in your painting doesn't suit its taste, so don't worry about it." He knocked on the wall, and Lulu came up to him enthusiastically, and brought him a bowl of jam and asked him if he wanted to take some. Maureen felt that it was very rude to refuse such an enthusiastic little guy, so he packed a large bowl of jam and a few chicken drumstick cakes. The bag that Lulu packed for him was a foldable magic food bag, which could be turned into an ordinary dinner plate shape by pulling it, so all the food would not be squeezed together. It was specially prepared for those students who usually sneak into the kitchen. "Thank you, Lulu." Maureen left the basement kitchen and ran towards the dormitory. It was dinner time now, and he didn't have to go to the hall. These were enough for him to have a meal. Back in the dormitory, he put the reduced portrait of Sir Cadogan on his bedside table and sternly warned him not to talk nonsense, otherwise he would lock it in the cabinet. Sir Cadogan became much more honest. When Hugo came back, he told Hugo about Sir Cadogan. "Is it really Professor Charles?" Hugo looked at Sir Cadogan, who was the size of a palm, and asked with some doubt, "Can we believe what this dwarf said?" "Dwarf?" Sir Cadogan felt offended and said angrily, "Who are you saying is the dwarf? Red-haired boy, you don't usually see my heroic spirit of riding a horse to fight on the battlefield. My heroic temperament will make you feel ashamed. Is this not a fool?" Hugo pouted. "Draw your sword. You arrogant and ignorant little red-haired boy." Sir Cadogan drew his wooden sword to duel with Hugo. Maureen simply turned over Sir Cadogan's portrait and let him face the wall. "Do you really believe what he said?" Hugo frowned. "To be honest, Our Muggle research homework is terrible, but Professor Charles didn't make things difficult for us. He is a good man, isn't he? Maureen said, I'm not sure, but since this is a clue, we have to investigate it. You can investigate, but don't let him find out. Hugo said, otherwise, we won't be able to get away with our Muggle research homework in the future. The next week was a series of rainy days. There was a match with Ravenclaw on Saturday. Pork thought it was very likely to be a rainy day on Saturday, so he insisted on letting everyone train in the rain. In addition to Quidditch training, Maureen also had to deal with his magic courses. What made him feel a little happy was that their astronomy class should be cancelled due to the continuous cloudy days. After all, there were no stars to be seen at night, and he didn't have to be criticized by Professor Sinistra in every astronomy class. But Maureen was wrong. Professor Sinistra got a batch of new brass telescopes. This is a newly invented cloud-piercing telescope. It has super-penetrating power and can directly penetrate the clouds. So rainy days can't stop us from learning fascinating astronomy. Professor Sinistra waved his wand and laid a transparent magic awning over the tower to block the cold rain. These telescopes are used by merchants for promotion. They are provided to our school for free, but they are just promotional products and can't be used many times, so you'd better buy this brand of brass telescopes. More inside. Even if he bought a most advanced telescope with a focal length of 10,000 times, it would be useless. The telescope would not help him correct those weird star maps. The stars would be misplaced. It would not give Maureen a surprise. Professor Sinistra's criticism was never absent. In addition to the bad astronomy, he was also thinking about it in the Muggle Studies class. Every time he saw Professor Charles' gentle smile, he felt weird. He always felt that there might be a cold and gloomy face under the mask of that gentle smile. The professor gave both of us an excellent on our assignments. My God, this is the first time I've gotten an excellent on a Muggle Studies assignment. Hugo was so moved that he wanted to cry. Usually, the Muggle papers they wrote were barely passing, but Professor Charles never gave them failing grades, nor would he give them too high a grade. Maybe it's because we all happen to have a magical talent for painting. Maureen looked at his own paper. Last week's Muggle Studies assignment was to write an article about the differences between Muggle and wizard paintings. He and Hugo made up a story for a long time and actually got an excellent. This shows that Professor Charles has a good eye for talent. Hugo whispered, think about it. How could such a person secretly do something bad to us? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. I hope not. Maureen looked at Professor Charles again. Professor Charles was a gentleman, elegant, and had a very friendly smile. He really couldn't understand how such a person could destroy Sir Cadogan's painting. Professor Charles seemed to notice that Maureen was looking at him, and he turned his eyes over. Maureen lowered his head quickly. But it was too late. Professor Charles noticed Maureen. Maureen, you did a good job on your homework last class. Now tell us how you can see the rhythm of life from this fruit painting. How can you see it? It's nonsense. How can he have any artistic talent? Maureen stammered, fruits are picked from plants. They are the final form of life, so I think the painter should express the theme of life. Or the painter may just be hungry and fill his hunger with a painting. Hugo chuckled beside him, and Maureen bumped Hugo with his arm to stop him from laughing. Professor Charles nodded slightly and motioned Maureen to sit down. Yes, we appreciate paintings mostly by imagination. Maureen's ability to think of this is very consistent with the thinking of Muggles. Hugo laughed softly. Professor Charles said that you already have the thinking of Muggles. Maybe you are already a qualified Muggle. Maureen wanted to laugh, but held back. After Professor Charles talked about a lot of Muggle ideas that Maureen couldn't understand, he said, okay, this class ends here. Maureen, Hugo, sweet, the three of you stay for a while. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, and the smile on Hugo's face froze. Chapter 97 Professor Charles's Mission. Maureen's biggest headache now is not knowing how to face Professor Charles. Professor Charles suddenly kept him here. Hugo was also guilty. Maureen told him his suspicions. After everyone arrived, the three of them walked to the podium. Professor, what can I do for you? Although Maureen was thinking about all sorts of things in his mind, he was not afraid and looked at Professor Charles calmly. Hugo said nervously at the side, Professor, we did nothing wrong, you won't put us in detention, will you? Detention? Oh, no, you misunderstood. Professor Charles was packing up the Muggle mouse and remote control he brought for this class, and said with a smile, You three have magical talents in painting. Can you come to my place on Sunday? Many paintings in the castle have fallen into disrepair, and the principal asked me to help maintain them. I need manpower, and I just thought of you three. At the end, Professor Charles added, I won't let your work be in vain. This can be counted as regular class points and added to your final exam scores. Maureen plucked up the courage to ask, Professor, do you have a magical talent for painting too? Yes. Professor Charles patted his briefcase and smiled. I have done more research on magical painting than all the teachers, so the principal gave this task to me. If you have nothing to do on Sunday, can you come? Maureen was silent for a moment and said, Sure. Sweet also nodded silently. Hugo looked a little unhappy, but both Maureen and Sweet agreed, so he had no reason to refuse. That's good. Come find me here at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. Well, you guys hurry to the next class, Professor Charles said. After they left the classroom, Hugo couldn't wait to say, You're crazy. What if he is really the person that crazy knight said? That's a good opportunity for us to find out. Maureen looked at this matter very openly. Maybe we can still catch him. If we don't seize this opportunity, I will never have the chance to find out about this matter. Don't you want to know what the mark on your back is? Of course I want to know. Hugo gritted his teeth. Okay. But I always feel that this is not a wise choice. I hope Professor Charles won't be too harsh on us. They hurried to the spell class. Hugo discussed this matter with Maureen for a whole class. The wand went off many times, and Maureen put it out. Fortunately, Professor Flitwick was a good man and only punished Hugo to copy the sentence, I am not a fire-breathing dragon, 100 times. In the next few days, Maureen has been learning other magic. He remembered what Arnok said, that teaching him combat magic was to prevent trouble before it happens. He began to agree with what Arnok said. If he had to face Professor Charles, it would not be a disadvantage to learn more magic. Fortunately, he had Arnok's help. The parchment was a treasure book from Maureen. Every time he wrote down something he didn't understand, Arnak would always reply to him quickly. Maureen didn't ask who Arnak was now, because Arnak wouldn't answer even if he asked. He just told Arnak that he couldn't see him on Sunday because of something. It was rainy these days, and Maureen would often take time to practice his fire spell in the rain. Now his flame is finally no longer a small flame, but has grown into a torch, which can withstand the erosion of rain. Saturday is Gryffindor vs. Ravenclaw. Both sides have to occupy the Quidditch field for training. Madam Hooch asked them to take turns to borrow the Quidditch field. When the field was reserved by Ravenclaw, Poke even took them to the Forbidden Forest for training. There is a large open space next to the Forbidden Forest, which is managed by Hagrid. Hagrid is very happy to lend them the space and even supervise them for free to prevent them from flying over the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid is more caring towards the students of Gryffindor. After training, he enthusiastically distributes the sweet and spicy cookies he made to everyone. I don't know what terrible peppers are mixed in these cookies. Everyone is so spicy that tears well up in their eyes. Maureen's tears flow down because of the spiciness. How is my cooking? Is it okay? The unshaven Hagrid asked expectantly. Great. Maureen wiped the tears from his cheeks. Look, everyone is moved to tears. After everyone took a bite, they wiped their tears. Yes. It's delicious. James sniffed and looked like he was sobbing. I will write a letter to tell my father that your cooking skills have improved again, Hagrid. He will be moved to tears. No one could bear to refuse Hagrid's kindness, so they could only nod and praise him in tears. The two Potter brothers exchanged a strange look with tears in their eyes. The first sentence they wrote back was to warn their family to throw away the biscuits sent by Hagrid immediately. It was urgent and could not be delayed. Great. After Quidditch training, Hagrid was very happy to let everyone take a few pieces back. As soon as Maureen returned to the castle, he took out his wand to clean up the biscuits, but James also tricked the unsuspecting Hugo into tasting it. I'll fight you, James. After eating it, Hugo cried and shouted that he wanted to duel with James. The latest novel is first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Saturday morning was the match between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. There was a grey drizzle in the sky, and Pork looked very happy. See? We trained in the rain this week just to meet this moment. This weather won't have any effect on us. We must win this game. We will use the storm tactics I developed and take advantage of the heavy rain. You should all know this. Poker assigned each player a pair of waterproof goggles in the locker room, revealing a look of foresight. But just as they all picked up their flying brooms, the weather suddenly cleared up and the sun came out. All the Gryffindor players stared at Poker with resentment. Their clothes had never been dry this week because of Poker's so-called storm tactics. Poker coughed twice and said, "If we can't use the storm tactics, then we will use the double-winged flying tactics instead. Don't be too disappointed. The effect of training will not disappear because of the clear weather. We will definitely encounter a rainy day next time. I guarantee that at that time, our storm tactics will definitely catch the opponent off guard." Poker then began to reallocate the players to play. Maureen was not a starter, and Poker was ready to give Sweet a chance to play because Sweet's flying skills were also very superb. But Sweet suddenly looked up at the sky outside and shook his head. "I don't feel well today. I can't play." "You don't feel well? Is it because of stage fright? Don't be nervous. Many people will feel uncomfortable when they play for the first time, but you will always have to face this. Come on." Poker knows the newbies very well. "No, I really don't feel well." Sweet's face was very pale and his tone was very firm. Poker frowned and said, "Okay, Lily, you play as the Seeker, and Maureen, you are not allowed to run around anymore, because I may adjust the tactics according to the situation at halftime, and I don't want to be unable to find anyone like last time." Chapter 98 Mark of the Wolf King. Outside, Hugo had loudly called out the names of the players of the two teams. Above the Quidditch audience stands, the phantoms of Ravenclaw's eagle and Gryffindor's lion were roaring and screaming. The audience was very enthusiastic and cheering. Diana walked to the platform outside to watch the game. Only Maureen and Sweet were left in the locker room. "Are you not feeling well?" Maureen asked curiously. Sweet just lowered his head and looked at the floor, and did not answer Maureen. Maureen was asking for trouble. When he was about to go out to watch the game, Sweet suddenly raised his head and said, "You are also suspicious of Professor Charles, aren't you?" Maureen frowned, glanced at Diana outside cautiously, and then said calmly, "What do I suspect about him?" Maureen did not rush to answer, because Sweet was also someone he suspected. Sweet said, "Those missing people, including myself. I saw him twice in the corridor on the 7th floor. I felt that I saw something I shouldn't have seen, but then I couldn't remember it." Maureen was extremely surprised. It was the first time that Sweet told him about this, but he still said calmly, "Maybe he just happened to pass by. You don't need to hide anything. I know you are suspicious of him. I have seen the knight in the painting in your dormitory in the corridor on the 7th floor." Sweet looked at Maureen calmly. Maureen could not see any emotional changes in Sweet's eyes. He was silent for a long time and said, "You remember Circa Duggan, but you don't remember what you saw in the corridor on the 7th floor." Sweet nodded silently, and his tone seemed very strange. "Yes, maybe I saw something I shouldn't have seen, and someone cast a forgetting spell on me. I can't be sure. I have forgotten a lot of things." "Then why are you telling me this?" Maureen asked calmly. Before things are clear, he must make sure that he leaves room for his words. "Because you have been investigating this matter, and I think you should have found something." Sweet said. "I didn't find anything." Maureen shook his head. Sweet looked a little disappointed. Maureen suddenly remembered something and asked, "Do you have any strange marks on your back? After you lost your memory, did you feel anything wrong with your body?" Sweet didn't say anything. His face was very pale, as if he was thinking about something. Then he took out a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Maureen. "Yes, it's this mark." Maureen took the paper handed over by Sweet in confusion. He took a look and found that the mark on the paper was neither Grindelwald's mark nor the mark of the Death Eaters, but a circle. In the middle of the circle, there was a wolf that seemed to be about to jump out. There was a scar on the wolf's left eye, which ran across the entire wolf's head, looking very ferocious. "What is this mark?" Maureen had never seen this mark before. This wolf mark was ferocious and made people very uncomfortable. "This is a copy I made from a book in the library," Sweet said. "It is the mark of a dark wizard before Grindelwald, Wolf King Lachenwolf. Although his reputation is not as good as Grindelwald and Voldemort, he once caused a stir in the wizarding world." Wolf King Lachenwolf. Maureen had vaguely heard of this name. Yes, werewolves are no strangers to him. He is a ferocious werewolf and a wizard who is good at black magic. He is the only wizard who can turn into a wolf at any time without waiting for the full moon. Sweet said in a deep voice. Maureen suddenly remembered, "I remember this person. I have read about him in a book before." When he was in power, the number of werewolves in the wizarding world reached a terrifying number. Many people were bitten by him and forced to become one of them. The wizards are most repelled by werewolves. Once normal people are bitten, it is difficult for them to be accepted by wizards. They can only be forced to join the camp of Wolf King Lachenwolf. At that time, the wizarding world was in a panic. Everyone dared not go out easily, for fear of being targeted by the Wolf King who could transform at any time. Yes, this is the mark of Wolf King Lachenwolf. Sweet pointed at the note in Maureen's hand. Maureen was more and more surprised. How could there be another mark of a dark wizard? The mark on Hugo's back was Grindelwald, the mark on Jamie's back was Voldemort, and the mark on Sweet's back was Lachenwolf? What are the marks on the backs of the other missing people? Wait, you were not born in December, how come there is a mark on your back? Maureen suddenly reacted. He remembered the clues he and Hugo had found. According to the rule, the next person who disappeared last time should be someone born in December. What is born in December? What are you talking about? I said I was born in September. Sweet emphasized. Maureen was confused now. Did he think wrong? These missing people are not based on the month? What do these people have in common? Who will be the next one? Can you show me the mark on your back? Maureen asked. Sweet glanced at Diana outside and frowned. Now. Maureen understood that now was not a good time. He said, wait until the game is over. Maybe you don't know, Hugo also has a mark on his back, but his is Grindelwald. Jamie also has one. His mark is Voldemort's skull. Sweet was slightly surprised, and nodded after a while. Okay. Maureen found that today was the most he had talked to Sweet since the beginning of this semester. He asked again, you deliberately said you were not feeling well, just to tell me this. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Sweet looked away and said, no, I really don't feel well. Maureen looked at Sweet curiously. He felt that Sweet was hiding many secrets, and the disappearance and amnesia were not the only thing that Maureen couldn't figure out. Then what do you do in the Forbidden Forest every morning? Maureen asked. None of your business. Sweet returned to his usual indifferent attitude. Maureen had gotten used to this weirdo, Sweet. At this time, the cheers from the Quidditch field outside continued. According to Hugo's commentary, Gryffindor temporarily led Ravenclaw by 90 hours and 30 minutes. It was estimated that Maureen would not even play in this game. Gryffindor did not send out the most promising player, Maureen Walker, in this game. Instead, they sent out another substitute, Lily Potter. Gryffindor had 3 members of the Potter family. James and Albus's attacks were perfect and powerful. Lily also assisted Gryffindor's chasers in attacking from time to time. Gryffindor once again widened the score. The game lasted for more than an hour. Poker did not seem to have any plans to change players. With a score of 340 to 180, it seemed that Gryffindor was almost certain to win. Now they were just waiting for Lily to catch the golden snitch and end the game. Maureen was also watching the game throughout, but at this time his mind was not on the game. Instead, he was thinking about all sorts of things. What did those different dark wizard marks mean? Is Professor Charles really the mastermind behind this? But at this moment, the whole audience suddenly screamed, because the seekers of both teams saw the snitch and rushed towards it. Everyone was cheering excitedly, whether it was the Gryffindor lion or the Ravenclaw eagle, the sound was deafening. With a long whistle, Madam Hooch ended the game. Lily did not catch the snitch, and the Ravenclaw seeker knocked Lily away and grabbed the snitch. The game was unexpected. Although the Ravenclaw seeker caught the snitch, he added 150 points and changed the score to 340, 330, which is still a Gryffindor victory. Hugo announced the final result loudly. Lily looked a little dejected. Although she won the game and every Gryffindor student was excited, she was not satisfied. Maureen suddenly remembered that Lily had disappeared before, so what was the mark behind Lily? Chapter 99, Painting Brush. Maureen walked over to Lily and comforted her. It's okay, Lily. The Ravenclaw seeker is stronger than you. You've done a good job. I could have done better, Lily said sullenly. But at least we won the game, didn't we? Maureen said. Lily sat on a chair in the locker room, threw her broom aside, and sulked alone. Maureen wanted to ask Lily if there was a strange mark on her back, but considering Lily's mood, he left this question for next time. Hugo ran over with excitement on his face and was about to discuss the game with Maureen, but Maureen stopped him and whispered, "Let's go back to the dormitory." "What for?" Hugo asked in confusion. Sweet. Maureen gestured in the direction of Sweet, who had already walked towards the castle on his own. They followed Sweet and returned to their dormitory together. There was no one else in the dormitory at this time. Toby and the others were celebrating outside, and there were only 3 of them in the dormitory. You have a mark on your back, too. Sweet sat on his bed and looked at Hugo. Maureen explained the matter to Hugo, who was also surprised. But shouldn't that person be born in December? How could it be him? Maybe we all guessed wrong. People with marks don't disappear in the order of birth. Maureen said in a deep voice. If it's not in this order, then what do we have in common? Hugo looked confused. They didn't understand this either. The only thing in common might be that they were all freshmen who had just entered school this year. Sweet silently showed Maureen and Hugo the Wolf King's mark on his back. The Wolf King's mark on his back was blue and lifelike, and much more ferocious than the image Sweet drew. Go and try it. Maybe you can see something. Hugo said uncertainly. Maureen asked for Sweet's consent, and his finger touched Sweet's mark. Sweet's memory flooded into Maureen's mind, and he returned to the corridor on the 7th floor. This was Sweet's vision. Sweet passed by the paintings on the wall and walked towards the classroom. This time, Maureen paid special attention to the paintings on the wall. He was surprised to find that the paintings in Sweet's memory were different from those seen by others, as if someone deliberately disrupted the order of the paintings in the corridor on the 7th floor. Sweet pushed open the door of the classroom and came to fog. He could vaguely see some fuzzy shadows, which looked like the Forbidden Forest, but Maureen was not sure. When he wanted to observe more, Sweet's memory stopped abruptly. Did you see anything different? Hugo asked impatiently. Sweet also looked at Maureen strangely. He just noticed that Maureen's eyes were glowing, and that feeling was extremely abnormal. It's still the same. It seems to be in the Forbidden Forest, but the fog is too heavy and I can't see clearly. Maureen shook his head. Hugo was obviously disappointed. My mark disappeared. Sweet said in surprise, looking at the mirror in the dormitory. Yes, I was also wiped out by Maureen last time. His eyes can exorcise demons and ward off evil spirits. He is the nemesis of dark wizards. Hugo joked casually. Maureen didn't have time to pay attention to Hugo. He couldn't find any clues from these dark wizard marks. He had a lot of doubts in his mind. Who would choose to put the dark wizard mark on a first-year student? Seeing that Maureen couldn't answer this question, Sweet left the dormitory, probably to go to the library. Hugo ran downstairs and celebrated the victory of the game with the Gryffindor students. Maureen stayed alone in the dormitory. He remembered Arnok's parchment. Maureen hesitated for a moment. Although he never figured out Arnok's identity, Arnok was a knowledgeable person. Maybe he knew something. Maureen took a pen and wrote on the parchment, Mr. Arnok, some students in our school disappeared and lost their memories inexplicably. When they reappeared, they had the marks of dark wizards on their backs, including Grindelwald, Voldemort and the Wolf King. Do you know what happened? Is it some kind of dark magic? About 5 minutes later, the parchment jumped and a line of words emerged. I have never heard of such dark magic. What you said may be a prank. Be careful. Arnok doesn't know either. Maureen sighed slightly. On Sunday, Maureen and the other 3 went to the Muggle Studies classroom, where Professor Charles was waiting for them. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. I'm glad you're here. Today's task is simple but tedious. You just need to help find the portraits in the castle whose paint has fallen off or whose magic has failed, and take them down. I'll be responsible for the rest. Professor Charles had a paint rack and brushes of different thicknesses next to him. But how do we judge if the magic of the painting has failed? Professor, I don't know much about painting. Maureen asked. This was the truth. Although his graffiti could talk and move, it was limited to that. The portraits in the castle were many times more advanced than the graffiti of the 3 of them. It's very simple, use this pen. Professor Charles smiled and handed 3 black quills to Maureen and the others. Hugo took the black quill reluctantly. Since Professor Francis of Defense Against the Dark Arts said that a quill that was cast with black magic would cause death once its name was written, Hugo threw away all the black quills. He was very averse to black quills. This is a special measuring pen. You just need to lightly draw a few times on the portrait of the castle and write a few words. If you can write words, it means that the magic of the painting has been lost and needs to be repaired. If you can't write, the portrait is normal. Professor Charles explained. What is the principle? If we write words on the portrait, Can we erase them? Maureen asked, puzzled. The portraits are protected by magic. Once the magic is lost, wizards with a talent for painting magic can use their magic to repair the portraits. The three of you have extraordinary painting abilities, so the words you write will be regarded as repair magic. Don't worry, the words you write with a special paint pen will disappear soon and will not damage the portraits in the castle. I will do the restoration work, and you only need to be responsible for the screening. Professor Charles organized his easel and paints, then continued, there are many portraits in the castle. Some of the portraits are hung very high. If you can't reach them, you can use a broomstick. I borrowed 3 from Madame Hooch, and you are temporarily allowed to fly in the castle. I think you all know how to fly, right? If you can't, you can ask the administrator Filch to borrow an escalator, but I suggest you don't go to him. He has a bad temper and is too old. Okay, do you have any other questions? Maureen and the other two looked at each other. They had so many questions in their minds. Chapter 100 Painting Appraisal. Professor Charles was now the object of their suspicion. They had to work with him at this time. It would be strange if there were no problems. But no matter how many problems there were, they could not express them. We understand, Professor. Maureen said. Then we will check one floor at a time. Take down the paintings that show signs of magic leakage and move them to this classroom. We will work in pairs. It will be faster this way. Hugo, follow me. I saw you being punished by Professor Flitwick to copy the sentence that you are not a fire-breathing dragon. It will be safer for you to stay with me for the castle's portraits. Professor Charles said. Hugo opened his mouth wide, and the expression on his face was as if he had eaten a slug. Since he began to suspect Professor Charles, he has been scared to death of Professor Charles. Now he has to work with him alone. This is not a good thing. Hugo was scared and looked at Maureen for help. Professor, I will work with you. I am very interested in the history of the castle's portraits. Maybe you can tell me something. Hugo will not go off as long as he does not cast magic. He will put his wand away. Maureen said boldly. Hugo nodded desperately and promised, yes, Professor, I will put my wand back in the dormitory right away and will not cast any magic. Like a Muggle, I swear. His desire to survive was very strong. Professor Charles smiled and said, that's fine, Hugo and Sweet, you two will be responsible for the basement to the 2nd floor, and Maureen and I will start from the 3rd floor. We will also go to the West Tower and the North Tower later, so hurry up. Hugo picked up the flying broom by the wall and whispered to Maureen, next time on your birthday, I will definitely give you 2 gifts to compensate. Oh, by the way, don't write your name on the painting with a black feather pen. Don't forget Professor Francis' death threat. Sweet glanced at Maureen and Professor Charles without saying a word, then picked up the flying broom and left with Hugo, leaving only Maureen and Professor Charles in the classroom. Then let's start too. Professor Charles also picked up the flying broom and said gently. Maureen followed Professor Charles, and he was also a little nervous, but he still mustered up the courage. They walked along the corridor together, and then Maureen broke the silence. Professor, I heard that you were the one who helped the fat lady to break up? This is quite strange. This is the first time I heard that people in paintings can fall in love. Maureen said. Are you talking about the guards in the Gryffindor common room? The people in the paintings also have their own thoughts. After all, they are also created by wizards, but there is still a difference between people in paintings and real people. Professor Charles took Maureen to the stairs and continued, the fat lady didn't tell me who she liked, but I analyzed it with her for a while, and she let it go. They came to the stairs, but instead of going up, they looked up at the portraits hanging on the wall. The stairs in the castle turned from time to time, and some portraits were hung where people couldn't touch them. Then let's start now. You go test those paintings, and I'll do this. Professor Charles had already stepped on the flying broom. Maureen had never flown in the castle before, because it was forbidden. Once someone tried to cross the line, Filch would first come running and scold them, then confiscate the flying broom and lock them up for several days. He also stepped on the flying broom and came to the nearest painting. The painting showed a ship sailing on the stormy sea. The seawater kept rolling, and the big ship was swaying in the huge waves. It could be destroyed at any time. There were many sailors on the ship desperately pulling the mast ropes to control the direction. Maureen took out the feather pen and drew 2 strokes on the painting. The feather pen did not show any handwriting, but a huge shark suddenly jumped out of the sea and tried to bite his brush, which scared him. I thought it was a good weather today. Maureen vaguely heard a sailor on the deck shouting. Hold on. We will land safely. This kind of weather will only make us more courageous. We are here to conquer the sea. The captain, wearing a hat, personally steered the rudder, full of passion. As soon as he finished speaking, a big wave came over, and the whole ship was directly overturned by the sea water. All the people on the ship fell into the water and thrashed in the waves. Several sharks jumped out of the sea and pounced on the sailors. They were very fierce and killed everyone on the ship. I hope you have a good sailing. Maureen shrugged his shoulders indifferently. The rolling sea water soon washed away the fragments of the ship and the sailors. But after a while, the ship that was swallowed by the waves had sailed out from the edge of the picture frame again. The captain and the sailors pulled the sail rope again and shouted enthusiastically that they would conquer the sea. Some paintings in the castle were bigger than Maureen, but some were very small. Maureen flew up from the bottom. When he flew to the middle, he saw a painting that was only the size of a fingernail hanging there. If he hadn't been so close, I'm afraid no one would know that there was a miniature painting hanging here. This painting was a picture of an old woman reading a book. There was also a crystal ball on the table. Maureen drew a stroke on the miniature painting with a feather pen with great difficulty, but no handwriting appeared. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Professor Charles, has this painting been cast a shrinking spell? Maureen turned and asked. Professor Charles took down a painting from the opposite wall, then flew towards Maureen, took a look at the miniature painting, and said, No, this is a female painter named Dora, who is famous for creating miniature paintings. When she paints, she uses such a small canvas. Then how did she paint? Maureen was very surprised. He had just put a lot of effort into writing in order to test whether the painting needed to be repaired. He really couldn't imagine how a normal person could paint on a canvas the size of a fingernail. Professor Charles carefully took down the fingernail-sized painting and exclaimed, This is what makes her special. Few wizards can control colors. Her brush is made of very fine wolf tail hair, which is not easy to control. She usually paints in person in front of everyone to prove that she does not finish the painting first and then shrink it. Every time Dora finishes a painting, a fixing spell is cast on the painting and the size cannot be changed. Maureen didn't know the so-called Dora. His own painting skills were terrible. Although he had a magical talent for painting, he was not interested in it. Therefore, he just marveled for a moment, and then continued to test other paintings. He found 2 paintings next to him with handwriting detectable, which meant that a lot of magic had been lost in these 2 paintings and needed to be repaired. He carefully took the 2 paintings down. But at this moment, Maureen suddenly felt an indescribable strangeness in his heart, as if he was being peeped at by someone. The feeling of being stared at from behind was very strong. He turned around abruptly, but did not see anything unusual. Only Professor Charles had his back to him, concentrating on observing a painting on the wall with a magnifying glass. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.